"Do I know you? Are you a friend of my husband from his middle school days?" I asked, eyeing the stranger warily. "I'm sorry, but you need to leave right now," I insisted, my voice firm and resolute. "I'm Jackson," the man introduced himself, seemingly unaffected by my demand. "I'm 33 and currently single. Today marked the wedding day of my colleague Lucas, who also happened to be a close friend." As I mingled with guests, a man who claimed to be a relative of Bryce, the groom, approached me and ushered me towards a waiting area just before the ceremony. Physically imposing and with a firm grip, the man guided me forcefully with his strong arms, leaving me feeling uneasy about his intentions. Thinking that perhaps the bride wanted to extend a pre-ceremony greeting, I followed the relative, assuming goodwill. Initially, I admired her apparent courtesy, but that admiration swiftly soured. It became evident that my presence was not welcomed for congenial purposes, but rather as a means of coercion. The bride, waiting in the anteroom, wore a malevolent expression that sent a shiver down my spine. Momentarily taken aback, I managed to compose myself and offered my congratulations. "Congratulations on your wedding," I said, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Her response was abrupt and commanding. "You need to leave immediately," she ordered, leaving no room for argument. "What?" I blurted out in disbelief, unable to contain my reaction to the bride's statement. Her response to my question was exasperatingly patronizing. "This is precisely why dealing with uneducated individuals is such a hassle," she muttered under her breath, the disdain evident in her tone. It was clear that the bride harbored disdain for my educational background, or rather, the lack thereof. She didn't mince her words as she elaborated. "Allow me to clarify. My husband and I hail from esteemed lineage, and today's guests belong to the elite echelons of society. Your presence as a mere high school graduate is jarring and distasteful to me." The implications were not lost on me. My educational background had become a source of embarrassment in their esteemed circles. Naturally, I was aware of Lucas' prestigious background and the disdain some harbor towards those without extensive academic credentials. It wasn't a new experience for me. I'd encountered similar attitudes before. Despite this, my bond with Lucas transcended such superficial judgments, prompting me to attend his wedding. My sole intention was to partake in the joyous occasion and celebrate my friend's union. However, the bride's blatant disdain towards me, a guest she deemed unworthy, cast a shadow over the festivities. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, I inquired if I could offer Lucas a few words of congratulation before taking my leave. The reaction from the bride and her relatives was immediate and explosive. Feeling overwhelmed by the tension and animosity, I couldn't help but mutter, "This is all a bit too much for me." Confused by their laughter in what seemed like a serious moment, I dared to inquire about the reason behind their amusement. The bride's response stunned me beyond belief. "My husband didn't invite you here out of friendship, but rather out of pity," she declared matter-of-factly. As she continued, the pieces of an unexpected puzzle started to fall into place. Despite my bewilderment, she proceeded, delving into the depths of my troubled past, one marked by parental abandonment and a childhood spent in the confines of an orphanage. She went on to explain how my struggles with malnutrition had left a lasting impact, evident in my tall yet slender frame even into adulthood. The revelation left me speechless, realizing that Lucas's invitation to his wedding was not an act of camaraderie, but rather an expression of empathy towards a former classmate enduring ongoing hardship. The bride jumped to a startling conclusion, assuming Lucas's invitation was an attempt to provide me with a meal at the wedding. I tried to reason with her, explaining the impossibility of such a scenario, but my protest fell on deaf ears. In a tone laced with disdain, she proceeded to belittle my worth, emphasizing the stark disparity between Lucas's accomplishments and mine. According to her, Lucas's compassion could potentially elevate his status, but she couldn't fathom allowing someone with only a middle school education to attend her wedding. She highlighted Lucas's prestigious academic background and successful career, contrasting it sharply with my own humble position as a janitor or security guard in the same company. The bride's words stung with contempt as she dismissed any notion of Lucas feeling sorry for me simply because we were former classmates. To her, the idea was preposterous, bordering on outrageous. We're both employed by the same company, one that's recently entered the public domain and shows considerable promise. It's a sought-after workplace, topping the charts for job seekers. Our company policy prioritizes talent acquisition, meaning individuals deemed valuable can join regardless of academic background. Despite the company's prestige, I acknowledge the disparity between a junior high school graduate like myself and a college-educated colleague. Yet, regardless of the motives behind Lucas's invitation, I simply wish to extend my congratulations. I harbored no expectations in return. However, earnestly articulate my sentiments and plead my case, the bride remains resolutely unyielding. Her gaze is consistently cold, as though regarding something unsavory. It's as if she's reluctant to even share the same airspace with me. She dismisses my heartfelt expressions of friendship with disdainful indifference. Are you trying to cozy up to my husband and snag a job with just a junior high school diploma? Her words were just a rejection of my presence at their wedding. They hinted at potential repercussions in the workplace. Caught off guard, I struggled to find a response. Despite the company's acceptance of individuals with minimal education, I couldn't bring myself to accept such condescension, especially from the spouse of my colleague. Suddenly, a male relative's actions escalated the tension further. Ignoring my protests, he forcibly grabbed at me, his actions invasive and aggressive. Attempting to fend him off, I reached for his arm, but he forcefully pushed me against the wall. A sharp pain shot through my back and chest, eliciting a low, guttural growl of pain. Enough, just leave, the relative barked before completing its sentence, abruptly opening the door to the waiting room. I was unceremoniously ejected, landing on the floor with a resounding thud. Despite the rough treatment, I resolved to carry on without offering my congratulations to Lucas. Preferring not to risk being barred from the wedding altogether, I sought refuge in a nearby cafe, biding my time before rejoining the festivities with the other guests. As the wedding reception commenced, I settled into my seat, hoping to blend in unnoticed. However, the bride's penetrating gaze soon found me. Without uttering a word, her lips moved silently, forming a single question directed at me. "What are you doing here?" The bride's expression shifted as the relative man spotted me. With determination, he lunged towards me, seizing my arm in an attempt to forcibly remove me. However, this time, I wasn't going to be ejected so easily. Nearby attendees sprang to action, rallying around me, shielding me from the relative's grasp. Panic flashed across the relative's face as he struggled to comprehend the situation. Sensing the urgency, the bride seemed equally flustered. Seizing the moment, I grabbed hold of a nearby microphone and addressed the bride, who remained bewildered by the unfolding events. "Bride, I owe you an apology for my earlier words. My desire to witness Lucas's wedding led me here today," I declared loudly, ensuring my message reached her despite the chaos surrounding us. Lucas, seated at the head table, overheard our exchange and interjected with confusion and concern. "What's happening here? What's all this about?" he demanded. The bride, visibly shaken by Lucas's unexpected intrusion, responded in a tremulous voice, "It's nothing, just go back to your seat, Lucas." With a hint of desperation, she added, "I asked Jackson to leave because he only has a junior high school education. It wouldn't be a good match for us, Lucas." Feeling a sense of resignation, I addressed the bride, who appeared lost in her own distress. "I apologize for any inconvenience I've caused. If it's what you desire, I'll sever all professional ties with Lucas. Please forgive me for any disruption I've caused." A hush descended over the entire hall as my declaration hung in the air. The bride was the first to break the silence. "What? Fired? What's going on?" Lucas's voice quivered with confusion. "You? What did you just say?" Recognition dawned on Jackson's face as he processed my words. "That's correct. I am Jackson, the president of our company," I affirmed, my tone steady. "I may have only graduated from junior high school, but I founded a delivery company at the age of 16. With nothing but a bicycle, I transformed it into a major corporation over the span of a decade. And in response to changing consumer habits, we swiftly transitioned into a publicly traded entity." Lucas wasn't just a friend to me, he was a lifeline, a source of unwavering support when I needed it most. He shared his meals with me, showing kindness and compassion during times when I struggled with malnutrition. Raised in an orphanage until the age of 15, I lacked the familial stability that Lucas enjoyed from the age of 12, when he was adopted by his current parents. Despite our different upbringings, Lucas and I remained close even after our paths diverged geographically. When we embarked on the journey of entrepreneurship together, Lucas vowed to dedicate himself to our shared vision. Witnessing his transformation from a shy individual to a confident groom filled me with immense joy. My determination to congratulate Lucas stemmed from a deep-rooted friendship and gratitude. I remained steadfast even in the face of the bride's objections. Unbeknownst to me, the bride's disdain stemmed from my educational background, yet I was unaware that being a junior high school graduate didn't preclude me from holding a significant position within our company. The authority to terminate employees rested with me, a fact that the bride herself had acknowledged when she requested I sever ties with Lucas. I gently assured her that I had complied with her wishes. In response, she uttered a cold remark, confirming Lucas's termination. The bride, previously frozen in shock, muttered disdainfully, "Fired? If you're such a failure, I have no use for you." Without hesitation, she renounced the marriage entirely, citing my lack of elite status and high income as deal breakers. It was a startling turn of events as she promptly called off the engagement with Lucas, who had just been dismissed from his job. The attendees erupted in uproar at her abrupt declaration. Amidst the chaos, any semblance of our previously amicable relationship vanished. Accusations flew as she labeled the situation a marriage scam, demanding compensation from Lucas for the broken engagement. Lucas's revulsion was palpable in the midst of the chaos. Quietly, I reached out and tapped the bride on the shoulder as she continued to raise her voice. Leading in, I whispered, "You might want to start saving that for alimony payments." With that, I initiated a video playback on the projector, revealing footage captured by a phone I had strategically left recording in the bride's waiting room. The recording, inadvertently triggered when a male relative manhandled me, potentially held crucial evidence of my injury. As I was pushed against the wall, the phone fell, continuing to record. What it captured was damning. The bride's indiscretion with the same male relative in the waiting room. As the ceremony commenced, I retraced my steps to the waiting room in search of the phone I suspected I had dropped. To my relief, I discovered it nestled in a corner, untouched. However, the shock of what I witnessed upon playing back the recording left me reeling. Witnessing such deceitful behavior on what should have been a sacred occasion shook me to the core. It was difficult to comprehend how anyone could stoop to such lows. Driven by a sense of moral obligation, I immediately sought out Lucas to disclose the damning evidence. The revelation of the bride's true nature sparked a fiery reaction from Lucas's relatives, who unleashed their fury upon the bride's family. In response, the bride's relatives vehemently denied any association with the man implicated in the recording. They adamantly refused to acknowledge any connection to him. It later emerged that the man accompanying the bride was nothing more than an unfaithful partner. Despite his charming demeanor, he was essentially a freeloader, lacking any meaningful employment. The bride, yearning for a life of prestige and sophistication within an educated family, sought to elevate her status by securing a marriage with Lucas, a gentle and unassuming man. Her intentions were revealed to be far from genuine, painting her in a negative light. In contrast, Lucas, dedicated to his studies and somewhat naive in matters of love, possessed a trusting nature that left him vulnerable to manipulation. Ultimately, I'm grateful that my humble education allowed me to see through the deceitful intentions of those involved. Never did I anticipate that my educational background would prove valuable in such a manner. The deceitful bride faced the consequences of her actions, being ordered to pay a hefty sum of $5 million for wedding expenses and an additional $3 million for terminating the engagement, accumulating the staggering debt of $8 million. As a result of the humiliation she endured, she found herself isolated from her family. Her unfaithful partner, alarmed by the overwhelming debt, fled the scene, leaving her to face the repercussions alone. With her once inviolable life now in shambles, the bride was forced into a solitary existence, residing in a rundown apartment and toiling tirelessly day and night in a desperate attempt to repay her debts. The arrival of the deceitful woman inadvertently strengthened the bond between Lucas and me, fostering a deeper friendship as we navigated through the ordeal. Meanwhile, our company experienced a period of rapid and steady growth. Observing Lucas's enduring desire for marriage, I contemplated accompanying him to a matchmaking event in the future.
Look, I'm Jess. I crunch numbers for a living, and I guess I'm doing all right for myself. I've got this kid, Alex, a real bright spark, keeps asking questions about everything under the sun. Then there's my other half, Mike. He runs the show at some warehouse, not the career of his dreams, but it pays some of the bills. And it's just enough for Mike, he's not the type to chase more. Our life's what you'd call run-of-the-mill. We wake up, go about our jobs, come back, and do the family thing. Not exciting, but steady. Problem is, the steady's turned shaky lately. Mike, he's been rolling in late from work, looks like he's been through the ringer every time. Bags under his eyes, shirt wrinkled, and his mood stinks. Tried to get him to chat about it, crack that shell of his. But that man's locked up tighter than a bank vault. Mike, what's eating you? I asked him just last night. You're acting all sorts of strange these hours. He just glared at me, all red-eyed and frazzled. It's nothing, Jess. Work's a pain in the neck, that's all. Just lay off, okay? I know when to back off, but it's like a splinter in my mind, you know? He used to be straight with me, and now it's like I'm talking to a brick wall. You're not touching your dinner, Mike. What's up? I tried to nudge him at supper. Nothing fancy, just some meat and potatoes. But he barely poked at it. I said, drop it, Jess. I ain't in the mood to chat about my day, he snapped back, pushing the plate away, and that end of discussion looked plastered on his face. Alex piped up from across the table, fork halfway to his mouth. Dad, you gonna come to my game this weekend? You said you'd try. Mike just ruffled Alex's hair, his attempt at a smile more like a wince. We'll see, champ. Your old man's got a lot on his plate right now. I watched them, father and son, an unsaid worry passing between them. That's my world right there, feeling like it might come apart at the seams. There's this static in the air every time Mike walks in late, a mix of sweat and something sour I can't place. He whispers about work stress, but there's a tug in my gut telling me it's more than that, a lot more. Mike's become like those puzzle pieces you find behind the couch, doesn't fit anywhere, doesn't make sense. And the more I push, the more he clams up. What gives? So there you have it. No sugarcoating, no dressing it up. Just our plain Jane life hitting a bit of a rough patch. I've got a kid to raise and bills to pay, and now a husband who's acting like he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. Only thing is, he won't let me carry a piece of that burden. I'm out here trying to figure it out without letting on to Alex that there's trouble brewing. Gone. Just like that, Mike's car was history. Came home on foot, a look on his face I had trouble reading. Jess, he said, his voice jittery, the car's gone. Stolen. So, call the cops, Mike. My brother can sniff this out. Easy, I said. But he was shaking his head before I even finished the sentence. No way, I've got it covered, he insisted, but he wouldn't look me in the eyes when he said it. The whole thing smelled fishy. He'd never had good luck with cars, but stolen? That was a new one. Got it covered how? You got a private detective in your pocket or something? I teased, trying to lighten the mood, but Mike wasn't having any of it. Just back off, Jess. I said I'll handle it. His words came out harsh, and he walked off to the shower, leaving me standing there with a kitchen full of whys and what-ifs. His dad's car became his new wheels. You should have seen it, a battered thing that coughed more than it roared. Borrowing it for a while, he said, each word heavy like stones. We sat down at the kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg, and I watched Alex, who looked more and more like his father every day, swinging his feet as he ate his cereal. He was itching to ask about the car, you could tell, but one look from me kept it shut tight in his mouth. Over the rattle of the morning news and Alex's spoon clinking, I decided to push one more time. We should report it, Mike. Insurance will eat us alive if we don't, I said, real casual. Mike slammed his mug on the table, coffee splashing out. Jess, for the last time, drop it. It's not your problem. Alex's feet stopped swinging, and that's when you know it's real bad, when a kid goes quiet all sudden like. The rest of the day was just nuts and bolts. Mike left in his dad's clunker, and I dropped Alex off at school, my head a mess with thoughts screaming in all directions. By the time I clocked into work, I had settled on one thing: I was going to find out what was going on, with or without Mike. Lunch break, my phone buzzed. It was my brother. "Jess, you okay? Heard about Mike's car. Need me to take a look?" he offered, always the protector, even though we're adults now. I wanted to say yes, tell him everything, but I hesitated. What if Mike was in deeper than just a stolen car? "I'll let you know," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, like it was nothing, just a car gone AWOL, not my world tipping sideways. By the time I got home, the place was silent, no sign of Mike or his troubles. Only Alex at the table, scribbling away at his homework, the TV murmuring in the background. So, here we go again, another chapter in the life of Jess. A missing car, a husband with secrets, and a boatload of unanswered questions. Tomorrow's another day, but one thing's for sure, I can't just sit on my hands. I'm finding out what's going on, one way or another. Mike's not the only one good at keeping things tight under wraps. Ever seen someone there, but not there? That's Mike. Misses dinner, doesn't kiss Alex goodnight, turns invisible come bedtime. Acts like he's on another planet. The weekend rolled around, Alex ready for those bike rides they used to nail every Saturday morning. He's there, helmet on, excitement buzzing off him like bees on a hive. And nothing, Mike's locked away in the bedroom acting like he's turned to smoke. "Mike, come on. The kid's waiting. You promised." I yelled through the door, my hand gripping the knob so tight my knuckles got white. "I'm not up for it, Jess. Just take him, will you?" His voice a muffled surrender from behind the wood. Alex's face fell a mile. I shrugged, combed his hair back with my fingers. "Let's go, champ, just you and me this time." We hit the pavement, me pedaling behind him, watching those little legs pump like pistons. He's getting good, too good. Should have been his dad watching. After, over cold sandwiches, I lay it out for his folks. The stolen car, the late nights, the silence heavy as lead. They're good folks, made me feel like family since day one. They listened, hands clasped, a wrinkle of worry etched between shared glances. "Jess, kids his age," his mom started, always the forgiving type. "They get like this. You ride it out. Midlife thing or not, he's riding out alone." I shot back, not buying any of this phase talk. "He's ditching his son, for God's sake." His dad chimed in, cutting the air with that old sense of authority he can't shake off. "Give the man space, Jess. We didn't raise him to bail on family." Space? Feels like he's halfway to the moon right now. I fired off, done with sugarcoating bitter pills. They didn't have the answers, none of us did. So, I sat there, the kitchen clock ticking away your standard awkward silence. They love him, but they're clutching at straws, just like me. Back home, I find Mike on the couch blanketed in shadows, the room dark except for the flicker of some late-night show. Alex is long asleep, dreams and all. "We need to talk, Mike. Now," I said, my voice steady as a drumbeat, every word a decision. He peels himself off the couch, tired or defeated, it's hard to tell. "What is it, Jess?" Mike huffs, like it's an effort just to stand. "I'm not blind, something's gnawing at you. It's eating us up, all of us." My words clipped out like bullets. Mike's eyes finally lift to meet mine, some spark in there fighting through the fog. "Jess, it's a mess you don't need to be in." "Oh, I'm in it, Mike. You made sure of that when you started sleepwalking through your life." I'd had it, my patience frayed to strands. He leans on the wall, for a sec, it looked like he'd slide to the floor. "I can't, not yet." That voice, a whisper of its regular self. "Okay, Mike, let's see how long you can keep up this act." I'm clawing for answers, and if Mike won't hand them over, I'll turn over every rock, every dark corner, until everything that's hidden starts spilling out into the light. For Alex, I'll do it. For us, I'll go the distance. The stillness of the night was shattered by the shrill ring of the phone. It was the sound that heralds news, seldom good. Mike's hand shot out to snatch it up, and the blood drained from his face as he listened to the voice on the other end. There were a few hushed, frantic words, and then silence. "Heart problems," he said, voice shaking, looking at me with eyes full of terror. "Dad's been taken to the hospital." Before I could even process the information, Mike was already dressed and darting for the door, his father's old car keys in hand. "Wait! I'll come with you!" I cried out, but he was gone. The door slammed behind him, and the sound echoed through the empty house like a grim reminder that I was now alone with my thoughts and the daunting tick-tock of the wall clock. Hours passed, each minute stretching longer than the last, anxiety my only companion. Doubt began to gnaw at me as I watched the moon trace its path across the sky. Against all instincts that screamed at me to stay put, I picked up the phone and dialed my mother-in-law. "Is everything okay with Dad?" I breathed into the phone when she picked up. There was a pause, a flicker of confusion in her voice. "What are you talking about, dear?" "He's right here, watching the late show with me." The room spun. "Mike, he told me there were heart problems, that Dad was taken to the hospital." "Oh, honey," she said, her voice laced with worry and something else, something akin to disbelief. "There's no hospital. There's no heart issues. Mike never said a word to us about going anywhere tonight." Bile rose in my throat. The betrayal stung like a slap in the face. My husband, the man who was supposed to be my partner in all things life threw at us, had lied straight to my face. "Mike left in a panic. Said it was urgent," I managed to say, my own voice sounding distant and foreign. "If he's not with you, then where?" "We'll figure this out," she cut in, her tone attempting reassurance that couldn't reach me. "You just stay there with Alex. We'll sort it all out." After I hung up, the silence of the house screamed louder than the ring of the phone ever did. The trust we had, the foundation we built our family on, felt like it had crumbled in an instant. Where was he, and why lie? The questions blazed in my mind, turning over and over without answers. The phone felt heavy in my hand as Ron's voice finally pierced through the static uncertainty. "Jess? What's this late call about?" Taking a breath to steady myself, I dove in. "Ron, Mike mentioned something about you, about a hospital. Is everything all right?" Silence enveloped the line for a brief moment before Ron replied. "Hospital? No, nothing like that. I'm fine, Jess." Why would Mike say that? A knot tightened in my gut, and I knew something wasn't right. "He said you had heart trouble. He took your car." "I'm worried, Ron." "All right, I can track where my car's gone off to," he offered after a pause. "Give me a moment." We hung up, and the ensuing wait filled the room like a thick fog. Alex's sleepy voice broke the silence with a question. "Is Grandpa okay?" I smiled reassuringly. "We'll know soon." True to his word, half an hour later, Ron's voice relayed through the phone. "The car's at the city hospital." A silent alarm went off in my head. "Thanks, Ron. We're going to check on this," I said, the last words shadowed by a chilling premonition. Grabbing our coats, I quickly dressed Alex. We shared no words on the matter, the gravity of our mission spoke loud enough. Together, we left the warmth of our home for the cool ambiguity of the night. The city's roads lay mostly empty as we made our way to the hospital, the silence in the car a stark contrast to the clamor of thoughts ricocheting in my mind. When we arrived in the parking lot, I found Ron's car abandoned under the eerie glow of streetlights. "Do we go inside, Mommy?" Alex inquired, his innocence a striking contrast to the complexity of our situation. I took a deep breath, weighing the options. My instinct urged me to surge forward, to confront the mystery head-on, but caution whispered its words of prudence. The pieces didn't add up, and whatever awaited inside might be something I needed to face without Alex by my side. "We'll approach this together, but carefully, Alex. We'll go in, but we have to be prepared for whatever we might find." He nodded, his small hand finding mine, a gesture of silent solidarity. I took Alex by the hand, making sure he stayed close. Remember, stay with me no matter what, I said to him as we walked towards the hospital entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a whoosh, and the sterile smell of the place hit my nose. You could never forget that hospital smell. We navigated through the corridors, my eyes scanning, looking for Mike. And then I saw him, just outside one of the rooms. He wasn't alone. I saw the woman first. Her arms cradling a newborn, looking tired and familiar. Mike looked like he had seen a ghost, his face drained of color the moment our eyes met. "What the hell, Mike?" I said, louder than I meant to. The woman stepped back, looking between us, holding the baby closer to her chest. "Who's she?" she asked, her voice blunt. Mike's eyes were glued to my face, his mouth opening and closing with no sound. "Jess, this is not what it looks like," he finally stammered out. "Really? 'Cause it looks pretty bad from where I'm standing," I shot back. The woman piped up again. "He sold his car. For us. To pay the bills here." Mike tried to interrupt, but I put my hand up. "I'm not talking to you right now." Turning to the woman, I asked, "How long has this been going on?" "A while," she said flatly, bouncing the baby slightly. "And the kid." I couldn't even finish the sentence. "Yeah, he's Mike's," she confirmed, looking me right in the eye. I felt like I got punched in the gut. My head was spinning, and I could barely register Alex's hand squeezing mine. "Mommy, is the baby sick?" Alex's small voice brought me back to reality. "No, honey, the baby's fine," I said automatically, still trying to wrap my head around the mess. Mike finally found his voice. "Jess, please, let's talk about this." "Talk?" I almost laughed, but it came out like a bark. "You got a whole secret life here, and you want to talk? You should have talked before it got to this." Mike looked down, and I could see he was shaken, but right now I didn't care. "Jess, I can explain." "Save it, Mike. We're done here," I said, cutting him off. I grabbed Alex's hand and turned to leave. Mike reached out, trying to stop me, but I snapped at him. "Don't you touch me." Walking away, I could still hear him calling after me, but his words were just noise. Alex looked up at me with questions in his eyes, but I wasn't ready to answer them yet. We got to the car, and I strapped Alex into his seat, taking a moment to breathe. I could feel tears pricking my eyes, but I held them back. As we drove away from the hospital, away from the unwelcome surprise, I didn't know what was going to happen. But right then, I knew I had to be strong, for Alex. We barely got home when I saw Ron and Linda's car screech into the driveway. They came out fast, walking towards me like they meant business. Linda had that look, the one that meant trouble, big trouble. "Jess, what's going on?" Ron was the first to speak. His eyes were darting around, looking for Mike. "It's done, Ron. We're done. I'm filing for divorce." "The fairy tale's over," I said, not mincing my words. Linda stepped forward. "What the hell did that boy do now?" The anger in her voice hit the air like a slap. I barely had time to tell them everything. Mike's car pulled in, right on cue. He got out, slow, like he was walking to his own funeral. "What the hell, Mike?" Ron was on him like a hawk. "You've got that girl, with a baby." "A baby, Mike." Mike's head hung low, his voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, I'm sorry. I messed up." "Messed up? You call this a mess up?" Linda was almost screeching now. The woman from the hospital stepped out of Mike's car, baby in her arms, and everything just stopped for a second. The look on Ron and Linda's faces, it was like they saw a ghost. "Who's she?" Linda's voice was ice cold now. Mike looked like he was fighting back tears. She's someone I'd been seeing." "Seeing? Well, you have a family?" Ron's voice boomed. Linda chimed in, "And you got her pregnant while you're married to our daughter-in-law? And we find out at a hospital?" The woman stood there, silent, holding the baby closer when Linda's eyes shot daggers at her. "This ain't sliding by, Mike. No way in hell," I snapped. Mike turned to me, desperation in his voice. "Jess, please. Save it," I cut him off. Linda stepped forward. "You're going to support this child. You're not walking away from this. But believe me, you're gonna pay for breaking our daughter-in-law's heart." Ron nodded. "And we'll be right there with her, every step of the way." Mike just stood there, defeat written all over him. "I'll do whatever it takes." "You bet you will," Ron said, his anger settling into a grim resolve. I looked at all of them, my soon-to-be ex-husband, his mistress, his parents. My lawyer. Tomorrow. I want this settled. Fast. Ron and Linda gave me a nod. "We've got your back," Linda said, and the look in her eye told me she meant every word. I turned on my heel, Alex's hand in mine, and walked back into our now broken home. Mike's voice followed me, saying sorry over and over, but it was too late for sorry. Life had sure done a number on us. But there I sat, on the porch swing, Alex curled up next to me, a math book opened on his lap. The sun was setting, the sky a mix of pink and gold, like a watercolor gone wild. "How's homework going, kiddo?" I asked, not ready to dive back into the adult world just yet. Alex shrugged. "Okay, I guess. The numbers keep doing a dance though." "Yeah, they do that sometimes," I chuckled, ruffling his hair. "They'll settle down if you stare at them long enough." We laughed, the easy sound of it taking the edge off the day. Then the phone buzzed. I pulled it out of my pocket, a text from Linda. "How are you holding up?" it read. I smiled. Linda always had timing like a clockwork. "Getting by. One piece at a time," I texted back. I looked out at the yard, thinking about how different life was now. Mike had taken a serious tumble from the life we once shared. His new place, a cramped apartment above a noisy bar, was a far cry from the house he'd left behind. He was pulling double shifts, trying to make ends meet, pay the alimony and whatever he owed to her. "Mom, when's Dad coming around?" Alex's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Haven't heard, buddy. But you know, we're doing pretty good, you and I answered. "Yeah, just us," he smiled, and there was something in that smile that told me the kid was going to be all right. Then the other phone rang, the landline. Old school. It jarred the quiet of the evening. Alex jumped up to grab it. "I got it, Mom." "Careful there, Speedy," I called after him. I heard his little feet pound the hallway. The sound of his laughter as he chatted with whoever was on the other end warmed the space. He was a resilient little man. I took a deep breath. "Mom, it's for you," he called out, his voice echoing. I picked up where he left off. "Hello? Jess, it's me." Mike's voice was low, almost guilty. "What can I do for you, Mike?" My voice was colder than I intended. "Just, are you both okay?" His voice sounded like it carried the weight of the world. "We're managing, Mike. Alex is doing great." There was silence, a long one, then a defeated sigh. That's good to hear." "Mike, look, we're picking up the pieces here. You should be doing the same," I said, more firmly this time. "I am, Jess. Or at least, I'm trying." Another pause. He was always heavy with the pauses. "Goodbye, Mike." The click of the phone felt like the end of an era. It kinda was. I walked back onto the porch, the creak of the swing welcoming me back. Alex looked up, his eyes were curious. Life was indeed very different now. Just Alex and me, with Grandma and Grandpa popping in enough to keep us smothered in love and bad jokes. The house was quieter, but it was still full of us, our life, our laughter, our love. The days ahead would still have their challenges. Divorce papers don't wipe away the messiness of life, and co-parenting was a road we were still figuring out how to navigate. But that evening, as the sky turned from pink to a deep blue, a sense of peace settled over the house. My name is Alice. I'm currently parked on this faded sofa, trying to stitch together the mess that my so-called family life turned into. You know, before all this, I was living the typical 9-to-5 grind. I mean, marketing isn't exactly a thrill ride, but it was my thrill ride. Enter Jack. Dear old Jack. We were college sweethearts. That's what they call it, right? We did the whole dance, meeting at some random party, him spilling his drink and charming me with his red-faced apologies. Fast forward, love blooms, and marriage seemed like the right next step. He was some hotshot coding genius, had a nice gig as a software engineer. And things were sweet, smooth even. Then Charlie happened. Our little bundle of sleepless nights and toothless grins. So, I hung up my marketing hat and decided to go all in on this housewife gig. That meant I had more time to start picking up on the nuances of Jack's moods, especially when Linda, the Lord Almighty mother-in-law, rained down her opinions via Skype. Never met her in person, but damn, she sure did like to make her presence felt from a few hundred miles away. You need to put your foot down, Jack. Linda's voice would slice through the speakers. A man's home is his castle, and don't you forget it. I'd see how Jack's eyes shifted, shoulders squared like he was gearing up for war. After the call, he became a different guy. If I left a mug on the counter or dared to sit down before the clock hit acceptable by his newly acquired standards, boy, would I get it. It's not a hotel, Alice. You see that? That's a dish out of place. His words felt like cold steel, not the Jack I knew. Jack would flip from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde and back before you could say schizophrenia. But it wouldn't stick. Once Linda's echo faded, I'd get my Jack back. On this particular Tuesday, Jack had that look in his eyes, that unnerving glint that always showed up post-Linda. He ambled into the kitchen, my domain, and leaned against the fridge with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Hey, babe, you need to pick up the pace around here. Mom said. I cut him off, hands deep in dough. If Linda says jump, we asking how high now? Not funny. She's right. We won't raise Charlie in a mess. I mean, look at this place. I followed his pointing finger around our perfectly tidy kitchen. The nerve of him. I thought about giving Jack a piece of my mind, but my mother always said to pick my battles, and with Jack on a Linda-fueled bender, it didn't feel like a winnable war. Suddenly, the sound of Linda's screechy tone popped from the living room. Another Skype alert. My stomach dropped. Come on, Alice. It's Mom. Watch the attitude. My eyes nearly rolled out of my skull. I wiped my hands and prepared to face the screen, our digital overlord. And there she was, in all her pixelated glory. Alice, dear, I see you're busy, but remember, Jack works hard. Keep that home nice for him, won't you? I gritted my teeth. Of course, Linda. Nothing but the best for your boy. Jack flashed me a warning look, like be nice or else. But as Linda carried on about her expectations, I swear I felt something in me start to crack. Would this ever end? Or was I destined to live under the thumb of a woman who wasn't even in the room? On a Thursday that felt like any other, with Charlie fussing in my arms and the smell of yesterday's dinner still haunting the living room, Jack came out with it. We're spending Christmas with my mom in her house, he said, not even looking up from his phone. I paused, Charlie's pacifier halfway to salvation. Christmas there? With Linda? The words were sour, just hanging in the air. Jack finally glanced up, eyebrow raised. Yep, good for the family and all that. High time they all met Charlie, don't you think? Pulling at the edge of my shirt, already spotted with who knows what, I frowned. But Charlie's so young, and I'm not up for a road trip, especially in December. He shrugged, scrolling through something undoubtedly important. Babe, it'll be fine. A bit of cold won't hurt him. Besides, Mom's already planning the whole thing. Heat flared up in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. Doesn't sound like a question, Jack. Did you even consider my say in this? Come on, Alice. It's not up for debate. This is what families do. They get together for the holidays. I shot him a look that could have burned toast. And usually, they ask, not announce, I snapped. He pocketed the phone and came over, trying to play peacemaker. Hey, I know it's sudden, but think about it. Could smooth things out with Mom. I laughed, but there was no joy in it. Smooth things out? You mean play house the Linda way or no way? Jack winced. That's not fair. You know how much she's been bugging me about visiting. I handed him Charlie, who seemed hellbent on testing his lungs. She's not the one who has to pack up an infant and deal with your family's drama. Jack bounced Charlie on his knee, a whisper of a smile on his face. It'll be like an adventure. You love adventures, remember? That's when the mom glare I'd been perfecting hit him full force. Adventures don't involve feeding schedules and diaper bags. But Jack had that determined look that spelled trouble. We're going, Alice. End of discussion. I let out a long sigh, nerves frayed. Fine, but hear this, Jack. We're not going there to be pushed around. I'm serious. He nodded, but there was a trace of something else there. And I won't remember saying yes to this kind of look. And you're gonna help, right? With the packing, the baby, and dealing with your mom? Yeah, of course, he said, though he was already picking up his phone again. With a defeated grunt, I moved to start making a list of what to take. Booties, blankets, and the battle gear needed to survive a week with Linda. The moment we stepped into Linda's house, a looming structure that seemed straight out of a ghost story with its creaky floorboards and chilly drafts, I knew we were in for a ride. A sea of faces turned our way, Jack's aunts and uncles, cousins by the dozen, and the venerable queen herself, Linda, holding court. Her eyes skimmed over me like a scanner, resting on our sleeping Charlie, wrapped snug in his blanket. There's my grandbaby, she exclaimed, her arms outstretched, with a warmth that almost felt real. But as she lifted her gaze to meet mine, the temperature could have dropped 10 degrees. Alice, she nodded, begrudging respect at best. Jack cleared his throat. Mom, thanks for having us. The room was buzzing with relatives chatting and the scent of cinnamon and pine. But the festive cheer didn't reach Linda's eyes when she turned back to me. Hope the drive wasn't too terrible. Roads can be unforgiving this time of year. It was all right, I returned with a tight smile, clutching Charlie a little closer. Well, let's not stand here catching a chill. Alice, Linda continued, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. I would really appreciate it if you could take the lead getting the place shipshape for Christmas. Jack shot me a desperate play nice look while I struggled to find words. Me? But, I've got Charlie too. Linda waved a hand dismissively. Oh, there will be plenty of hands eager to dote on the boy. Besides, I've seen your Instagram. You've got a knack for this sort of thing. My Instagram, the place where I posted meticulously filtered photos of our home that hid the chaos of reality? I gritted my teeth and forced another smile. I guess I can give it a go. A look of approval crossed Linda's face, one that didn't reach her eyes. So I dug into box after box of holiday decor, feeling more like Cinderella than a welcomed guest. Jack's family was a loud chorus of advice and backseat decorating, all while passing Charlie around like the season's hottest toy, a living, breathing doll for them to coo over. Jack vanished into the belly of the house, with only the odd shout of "How's it going there?" or "Mom says the garland should go higher," to remind me he was still there. By the time dinner rolled around, the grand old house glittered and shone like something out of a fairy tale where the fairy godmother had taken the day off and left Cinderella to do all the work herself. At the table, loaded with more food than the whole neighborhood could eat, Jack raised his glass in a toast. To family, he said, smiling. I caught a wink he sent his mother's way. I tried to match their cheer, but fatigue had long since taken the wheel. Jack noticed, but not with the sympathy I needed. You could have put a bit more tinsel up, he remarked offhandedly between bites. Mom noticed. After a long night chasing the elusive spirit of Christmas at the behest of Linda's pointed directions, all the while keeping a smile plastered on my face for the sake of holiday peace, I retired to our room. Next day I found Jack in what they called the den, but it was more like a wild man cave where Christmas seemed to have thrown up. There he was, sprawled on the couch, a beer in one hand, eyes glued to some game on TV. The sound of sports commentators filled the room. "Jack, we need to talk." My voice was firm, louder than I intended. He glanced up, annoyed at being interrupted. "What's up now?" "It's about yesterday, about everything since we got here." "I'm tired, Jack. And I feel alone in all this." The words spilled out. He scoffed. "Alone? With all my family around? Come on, Alice. You've got to toughen up. This is the big leagues." "I'm not talking about numbers, Jack. Look, your mom, she's piling everything on me, and where are you? Off the grid the second any work pops up." He rolled his eyes. "Not this again. Just do what she says, Alice. That's how it works around here. You'll live." Frustration boiled over. "I'm not one of your mom's robots, Jack. I'm your wife, and I'm asking for your help. It's like you don't get it." He let out a laugh. "Help? What do you want me to do? Decorate cookies? Hang tinsel? That's kid stuff. Just stick it out." His words stung. "Kid stuff? Really? Because last I checked, we're a family too. Or is that kid stuff as well?" Jack stood up, his face getting redder. "Watch your tone, Alice. Don't start something." The room felt smaller, the walls closer. "Start something? No, I'm finishing it, this conversation and your damn free ride." "What's your deal, Jack? Too good to help out your own wife?" He moved towards the door of the den. "I've had enough of this. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. Remember that?" I followed him. "Yeah, I remember. Promises. Support. Respect. Heard of them?" But he was already out the door, leaving me talking to a room full of silent trophies and blinking lights. The next day, there wasn't much change. The family was all over the place, and I was still the designated workhorse. Jack avoided me, getting tight with his cousins, laughing too loud over beers and football. I worked, hardly speaking to anyone, especially not Jack. I was too angry, too worn out. And Charlie, bless him, seemed to sense the tension, becoming fussier with each passing hour. In the middle of a diaper change, Charlie crying and clutching at me, one of Jack's aunts walked in. She didn't knock, just barged in with a bucket of soiled linen. "Here you go. Add it to the laundry when you can." I looked at her, then at the laundry. "I can't right now. Can't you see?" She raised her eyebrows, surprisingly bold. "It's just laundry, dear. Plus, that's what you're here for, isn't it? To help out?" I straightened up, holding Charlie tight against my chest. "Just because I married Jack doesn't mean I'm the family maid." She frowned, her own patience wearing thin. "Don't be so sensitive. We all do our part here." "Yeah? When's Jack's turn?" Her face turned sour. "Jack? He's catching up with family." "Catching up?" My voice rose over Charlie's cries. "Is that what you call it?" She left without another word, but her message was clear: this was on me. I was on my own. I had to shove my way through the crowded store on Christmas Eve, grabbing whatever was left on the shelves. Didn't matter much what it was, anything could be turned into a Christmas dish with enough butter and salt, or so I figured. My phone was buzzing in my pocket the whole time, probably Jack or Linda wondering where I'd got to. But I was too frazzled to answer. Back at the house, I lugged the grocery bags through the snow, my arms about to fall off. Nobody came out to help, of course. I dumped the bags in the kitchen and rolled up my sleeves. The turkey wasn't going to cook itself. The oven felt like a furnace on my face, the heat mixing with my frustration into a kind of steam. As the gravy simmered and the pie crust started to brown, I felt my head spin. I took a seat for a quick breather. Linda stumbled upon me as if I'd planned it, her face twisting into a scowl. "What's this? Just sitting around while there's work to be done?" Before I could gather my wits to answer, Jack appeared behind her, his tone sharp. "Yeah, Alice, what's the deal? We got a timetable here." "I just needed a second," I said, the room tilting a little. "I'm not feeling too." "Oh, save it." Linda cut me off. "This family needs team players, not weaklings. If you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be here." Jack didn't say a word in my defense, just stood there nodding like a puppet. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I wouldn't let them see. "I'm not weak," I shot back, pushing up from the chair. "And I don't need this crap, not from you or anyone." Jack's face grew hard. "Watch it, Alice, or you'll be out of here so fast." He let the threat hang between us, heavy as the smell of roasting meat. I bit back a sob, threw on the apron, and turned back to the stove. They left, satisfied that I'd been put in my place. But later that night, after the plates were licked clean and the presents opened, after the laughter and the carols had quieted down, I lay in bed, the silent tears finally falling. They thought I was the weak one, but it was them, all of them. Weak for not helping, weak for not seeing, weak for not caring. Christmas dinner was set up like some kind of fancy spread you'd see in a magazine, except there was one thing off: my seat. It was away from the main table, like I had some sort of disease. I could hear them all, the clinking glasses and the loud laughs from where I was put. I sat there for a moment, staring at the untouched plate. A dry turkey slice stared back at me, the cranberry sauce bleeding into the stuffing like a bad joke. That's when I knew I was done. Finished playing pretend. Charlie was upstairs, asleep in one of the guest rooms. No way was I going to have my kid grow up thinking this nonsense was normal. I stood up, my chair screeching against the floor, louder than I expected. I didn't care. I went upstairs, packed the bags I'd been living out of for what felt like forever, zipped up Charlie's little backpack with his favorite toy and the picture book we read every night. Downstairs, the laughter ticked up a notch. They didn't even see me hauling our lives out of there in 2 trips. The walk to the train station was brutal, the cold cutting through my coat. But each step tugged a little something off my shoulders, a weight I didn't want to carry. At the station, it was empty, the kind of quiet you only get when everyone's at home. I sat there on the bench, Charlie bundled up beside me. "No more of that for us, Charlie," I whispered to him, hoping he was dreaming of something nice, something simple. "Just you and me now." The train rolled in, a lonely hunk of metal that blew hot air out the sides. I picked up Charlie, still asleep, and stepped inside the warmth. The clang of the closing door marked the end of an era as I lugged my bag out of what used to be home. The small bundle that was my baby dozed quietly in my arms, blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding us. It was just the 2 of us now, heading into the great unknown. I remember stuffing onesies and diapers haphazardly into the bag. There were no pictures taken off the walls. No second looks. Just the essentials for him and a few clothes for me. Every grab, every zip, felt like a tiny rebellion. Pulling into my parents' driveway was like stepping into a world paused at the brink of joy. They rushed out, my mom's arms wide, my dad's face split with a grin beneath his old, faded cap. "Alice, baby, come in. It's freezing out here." Mom smothered us in one of her bear hugs, the kind that could squeeze the sorrow straight out of your soul, while Dad took care of the bag and the base for the baby carrier. The warmth of the house hit me like a mug of hot cocoa. They had the Christmas tree twinkling, the lights blinking in a slow, sleepy pattern. We settled into the living room, and before I knew it, my mom had a steaming plate of food in front of me and a stocking filled with baby rattles and teething rings. It felt unreal. Laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the thick silence I'd escaped. The baby stirred in arms, and I kissed him, promising silently that it was going to be different. We were just about to toast, the clink of our glasses ready to sing, when my phone rang, jarring against the melodies of Jingle Bells. I checked the caller ID, Jack. Hello? Alice, where the hell are you? It was Jack, his voice a cocktail of anger and confusion. At my parents'. Where else would I be? I said, not missing a beat. There was a pause, and then, you need to come back. This isn't your home anymore. I snorted, the laughter bubbling up from deep within, genuine and loud. You're joking, right? I'm done with being treated like I'm invisible until you need something. Don't be dramatic. Just get back here. Everyone's asking about you, the dishes are piling up, I cut him off. Look, listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once. I'm filing for divorce. Got it? I'm not your unpaid maid, Jack, never was. I don't know what made you think I was. The other end of the phone was silent. Then, the dial tone buzzed in my ear. He'd hung up. Mom was looking at me, eyes wide. I hung up the phone and met her gaze straight on. I should have done that years ago, I said. You're staying here tonight, Mom said, solid and sure, the way she'd said things when I was a kid and the world was too big and scary. Yeah, I agreed, feeling the truth in her words. Yeah, I am. Charlie's laughter filtered through from the other room. Let's go celebrate Christmas, I said with a trembling smile. And with the click of the phone, I sealed the decision in the pocket of my jeans, and stepped back into the warmth of the living room where the promise of a peaceful night hung gently in the air, a stark contrast to the storm I had just weathered. Waking up to the same old ceiling crack had become kind of a comfort. The kitchen was already buzzing when I came down. Mom was at the stove, and Dad was half buried in newspaper at the table. Charlie was making a go at a slice of toast, more crumbs decorating his lap than making it into his mouth. Morning, I mumbled, grabbing the pot to pour myself some coffee. Before I got the chance to take a sip, the phone was blaring its old ring from the wall. Dad's eyes met mine. With a hint of a smirk, I answered it, knew who it was before I even said hello. Alice, darling, I need you to come back. Jack's voice came through, half pleading, half like he was ordering a pizza. A man needs his wife. I need you to take care of things here. I almost choked on air, the laugh came out so hard. Jack, honey, you lost the right to need anything from me. But nothing, Jack. I'll send over the divorce papers by the end of the week. You can take care of yourself, or find someone else to boss around. Have a nice life. And with that, I hung up. Mom was staring at me, one eyebrow raised. Everything all right? She asked, a knowing look on her face. Couldn't be better, I said, finally taking that sip of coffee. It was bitter, strong, and hot, just how I needed it. As weeks turned into months, that new chapter in life I'd opened became less about what I'd left behind and more about what was ahead. Divorce papers were signed, delivered, and done with. My bank account got a little heavier with the first round of alimony checks, child support Jack called it, but let's be real, it was guilt money. Either way, it was for Charlie, and that's all that mattered. The job hunt wasn't easy, wasn't hard either. Just a truckload of maybes and a handful of not. One day, sitting at the kitchen table with the want ads, I couldn't help but wonder if begging for jobs was just begging to go back to a life like the one I had with Jack. No, that wasn't for me, not anymore. Why the long face? Dad asked, scrunching up his own as he looked over at me from his chair. Just thinking about work, or the lack of it. You'll find something, he said. You got more backbone than half the blokes at the factory. They should be begging you to work, not t'other way round. That night, with Charlie snoozing away in his crib, I lay awake a little longer than usual, the house quiet except for the distant sound of Mom and Dad talking softly downstairs. Maybe it wasn't the new start I'd imagined, with a new place of my own and a sparkling career. But it was solid ground under my feet. It was my family, my boy, and a future that was mine to shape. No more of Jack's dark clouds on my horizon, no more dancing to someone else's tune. Hey there, my name is Rose. I'm the one you don't hear about in those family photos where everyone's smiling like they don't have a care in the world. I got a sister, Lucy. She's been the star of the show since the day she was born. Little Miss Perfect, right? And me, I'm basically the backstage crew in my own life. But enough about that. So, let me paint you a picture. It's the morning of my 10th birthday. I'm at the breakfast table, thinking maybe today, things will be different. Dad's munching on his toast, buried in a newspaper. Mom's fluttering around, and Lucy's there, eyes all wide and innocent. I'm waiting for some pancakes, maybe a happy birthday, you know, the usual birthday jazz. That's when Lucy, all sweet-like, starts to cry. Through her tears, she goes, "Rose pushed me, and I hurt my knee." I'm standing there, jaw on the floor. What? No, I didn't. But Dad just peers over his paper, frowning like I'd spilled his coffee, and Mom, well, she's already knee-deep in Band-Aids for Lucy. "You gotta be kinder to your sister, Rose," Mom lectures, no room for buts. But you heard your mom, Dad cuts in. And just like that, end of story. No pancakes. Lucy's whimpering turns into a sly grin the moment they're not looking. Birthday cancelled on account of sibling drama, courtesy of yours truly. Fast forward to Christmas that year. I wake up thinking maybe this time I'll score some decent loot. We're around the tree, and Lucy's tearing through her presents like a tornado. New phone and fancy threads. I find my name on a package, rip it open. Socks. And some dollar store alarm clock. I mean, come on. Later, I'm sitting on the porch, skipping rocks on the sidewalk. Grandma Joan finds me there, hands me a cup of hot cocoa like she always does when the world gives me the cold shoulder. "Thanks, Grandma," I manage, trying not to sound as grumpy as I felt. High school was no different. Lucy had the looks, the friends, I had acne and a job at Sal's Pizzeria. Worked my tail off, got those grades, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be my ticket out, right? There's this one night, senior year, college brochures spread out on the kitchen table like a bad hand of cards. Dad's fixing the sink, Mom's doing her Sudoku, and I'm about to lay my cards down, tell them about the colleges wanting to throw scholarships my way. I'm all, "There's this college outstate dash. Money's tight, Rose," Dad says straight off, not even looking up. "We're looking at community options." I shoot a look at Mom for some backup. She doesn't look up from her puzzle. "We're saving for your sister's college fund." That's when Grandma Joan steps in, real quiet. She talks to Dad first, then Mom. It's not pretty, but when she's done, she's got that check for me, pressed it into my hand like a secret handshake. "Make it count, kiddo," she says, eyes all fierce. And that was it. That check was my golden ticket, my ride far away from socks, alarm clocks, and Lucy's messes. Out of the circus, just like Joan said. As soon as my feet hit the campus of that outstate college, it was like I could finally breathe. No more Lucy, no more comparisons, no more feeling like an afterthought. I was my own person here, and that was all kinds of liberating. So yeah, I dug into those law books like they were the only things keeping me grounded. I was at the library more than I was at my own dorm room. Came to know every coffee stain on those tables like they were my personal constellation of caffeine. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Money was tight. I remember this one time at the campus grocery store, counting coins from my pocket for a week's worth of ramen. The cashier was tapping her nails, looking bored out of her mind. "You gonna pay or what?" she drawled, popping her gum. I was a dime short. A freaking dime. "Hold on," I mumbled, searching my pockets for a coin that wasn't there. That's when this guy behind me sighed loudly and threw a quarter on the counter. "Here, keep the change," he grunted. Embarrassing? Yeah, you bet. But it was also the day I met Mike, who turned out to be a fellow law student and a bit of a smartass. A friend, something I hadn't had a lot of. In the grind between classes and part-time jobs, Mike and I stuck together. He was as plain-spoken as they come, didn't have patience for show-offs or slackers. Wasn't the type to sugarcoat feedback on my mock trial performances either. "You gotta stop sounding like you're asking permission to be fierce," he'd say. "You know this stuff, Rose. Act like it." And I took that to heart. By the time I was sitting for the bar exam, I felt like I was carving my own path, laying down the law, you know? I wasn't Rose, Lucy's sister. I was just Rose, soon to be Rose, ESQ. At the firm, things were different. I had to prove myself again, but this time it was on my own terms. The partners, they were a mixed bag, some welcoming, some wary of the new blood. I remember being cornered by one of the senior partners, Bill, during my first week. "So, you're Joan's granddaughter," he stated more than asked, eyebrows up like he discovered gold. "Yeah, how'd you know?" I was wary, keeping my answers short and my guard up. Bill chuckled. "Joan and I fought in the same trenches once. She mailed me your resume. Said you had grit." I'd have groaned if it didn't feel like a small victory. Grandma Joan, still my one-woman fan club. In that firm, I made it known I wasn't there to ride anyone's coattails. I worked cases like they were puzzles only I could solve. In the courtroom, it was another world. I wasn't the kid sister or the overlooked daughter. I was fierce. Mike's words came back to me, about not asking for permission. "If the glove doesn't fit," I'd say, cutting through the noise, "then you must acquit." Simple, easy, nothing too fancy, to the point. It worked. So yeah, I escaped. From family expectations, from always being second best. I made it on my own terms. And it felt like freedom, hard, exhausting, but undeniably mine. It all started at the courthouse steps where I bumped into Tom, literally. Papers and apologies flying everywhere. He was there to support his buddy. I was on my first case. We laughed it off, grabbed coffee, and it turned out we could talk for hours. He was a contractor, not bothered by my legal jargon, just easygoing and genuine. Before I knew it, we were inseparable. When we decided to get married, the plan was no fuss, just us and the people we loved, sharing a good time. That plan didn't stand a chance once my family entered the picture. "It's nice," Mom would say, dabbing the corner of her eye, but her tone adding a silent "but." Dad just patted my shoulder, a silent solidarity that didn't quite warm me. "And Lucy?" She had to make an entrance, even if it wasn't her day. She arrived in a dress so flashy you'd think she was the one getting married. But I bit my tongue. It was my wedding day, and I wasn't gonna let her rain on my parade. At least that was the plan. Tom, he was a champ about it. Meeting my sister, he just gave me that look. Wow, she doesn't hold back, does she? I wanted to bury my head in my bouquet. You have no idea. The guests started piling in, and for a moment, it looked like it might actually be a good day. That's when Lucy decided she wasn't getting enough attention. "You're just going to ignore me? On your wedding day?" She was almost shrieking, eyes darting around hoping someone would sympathize with her. I took a deep breath, counted to 5 in my head. I was done being the peacemaker. "Lucy, not today. Please." She huffed, tossing her hair. "Whatever. I'd give it a year anyway." Mom shot me a warning glance, like it was my job to fix it. As usual. But something in me snapped. This was my day. Mine and Tom's. I wasn't going to let Lucy or anyone else mess with that. "Get out," I repeated, and my voice didn't even shake. Lucy looked at me with wide eyes, kind of like she did when we were kids, and I'd finally stand up to her nonsense. "What did you just say?" "I'm done with your drama. This is my wedding, and you're not gonna spoil it." She sputtered, red in the face now. "But I'm family." "So? Family doesn't pull this kind of crap, Lucy. Not today. Not at my wedding." Mom tried to intervene. "Rose, don't do this, she's just..." I cut her off. "No, Mom. Enough is enough. Lucy's face was a storm cloud, and she looked ready to argue. But this time she didn't. Maybe it was the way I stood, maybe it was Tom's hand in mine, or maybe it was the crowd of guests watching the drama unfold. For once, Lucy didn't have a comeback. She just turned and strutted out, heels clicking against the pavement like a judge banging a gavel. The rest of the day went by in a blur. I said, I do, we kissed, and I've never felt so much like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not Lucy's shadow, not my parents' second choice, but Rose. Just Rose. And that was more than enough. Okay, so get this, a month in, post-wedding drama, and Lucy pulls a Houdini. Total ghost town where she used to be, right? Scoots out of town leaving behind nothing but a crummy note. And guess who's the villain in her sob story? Yup, yours truly. Turns out her exit strategy includes playing the blame game, and I'm it. Her note? Classic Lucy, painting her runaway act with a bunch of bull about how I've done her wrong. Like she's the fragile flower and I'm the big bad wolf. At the next family dinner, the air's so thick with tension you could cut it with a knife. Mom's at the head of the table, flinging accusatory glances my way like she's dealing cards at a high-stakes poker game. Rose, how could you let it come to this? She starts, and I can feel the showdown brewing. Dunno, Mom. Maybe 'cause I ain't the warden in Lucy's personal prison, I shoot back. I'm not in the mood for a guilt trip, that's for sure. Dad chimes in, voice laced with that don't rock the boat tone. Your sister thinks you never gave her a break. That's serious. Are you kidding me? I can feel my temper flaring, words hot on my tongue. After everything, you're gonna take her side? Based on what, a damn piece of paper? That's when Granny, sweet Granny, who always had my back, pipes up with a voice like thunder. Rose. Your sister's out there alone, scared, and it's your doing. You too, Granny? I couldn't believe my ears. Since when do you buy this load of crap? Her eyes got all misty. Your ways pushed her to it, Rose. You're not innocent. That was a gut punch. I've been looking out for her since diapers, and this is the thanks I get? The old lady was on a roll though. No excuses, girl. You've got a heart, use it. The whole clash was absurd. There we were, a family tearing into each other over Lucy's concocted tale. Even Granny, who'd never once doubted me, was singing a different tune, and boy, did it sting. I stormed out of there, the room thick with unsaid things. Granny's betrayal cut deep, but what cut deeper was knowing I'd stood up for myself. I was done being anybody's villain, especially not in Lucy's crafty escape act. If they wanted to believe her over me, that was on them. Tom's been acting off, real off. All those late nights at the office, trips out of town every other week, big projects he can't talk about. Yeah, right. Man's as subtle as a brick through a window. And then, like fate's trying to tell me something, I catch a glimpse of something red peeking out from his jacket pocket while I'm on laundry duty. A receipt for some fancy women's shop. No way was that for me. I didn't confront him. What's the point when you know you'll get nothing but half-truths topped with lies? I decided I'd do it the smart way, let someone else do the digging. Yeah, I called up a private eye, got him tasked on tailing Tom, seeing what really goes down when he's working overtime. Jimmy's the name of the PI, seems like he's been in the game long enough to see everything twice. Just want the straight shot, I told him, no chasing ghosts. He gave me a nod that said as clear as day, I got this. So I wait. Days feel like weeks when you're waiting for a bomb to drop. I keep things normal at home, or make a damn good show of it. Every time Tom tells me he's got to work late again, I nod, smile, and say something like, don't work too hard, babe. One night, he's at it again. Gotta finish up some things at the office, you know how it is. I shrug, playing it cool on the outside, but inside, my mind's racing. Sure, Tom. Don't forget to eat something. Wouldn't want you wasting away. He gives me a peck on the cheek and he's out the door, and I'm left feeling like I'm on some warped episode of a TV show where the wife's the last to know. I try focusing on a book, some cooking show, but who am I kidding? My head's not in it. Instead, I'm thinking about that receipt. That damn piece of paper that feels like it's burning a hole through the fabric of our little suburban life. Finally, I get a text. Not from Tom, but from Jimmy. My stomach drops when I see his name flash up on my phone. I don't open it. Not yet. Can't bring myself to. Whatever's in that message, it's gonna turn my world upside down. Instead, I pour myself a glass of wine, let the cool liquid settle my nerves. They say ignorance is bliss, but I pass that exit miles back. I have to look. I pick up the phone, thumb hovering over the screen, and then I press. But Jimmy's text isn't the full picture. It's just to say he's on the case, got some leads. We'll know more soon, he writes. That's it, then. No turning back now. Tom's little secrets are on borrowed time, and when the truth comes out, I'll be ready. There's something liberating about it, knowing that I'm no longer in the dark, playing the doting wife, smiling while something rotten's eating away at my marriage. Grandma Joan and I hadn't been seeing eye to eye recently, but the envelope stuffed with the PI's evidence was burning a hole in my bag and my conscience. Deep down, I knew she was the only one who could give me the straight talk I needed without sugarcoating the jagged pill I was about to swallow. I knocked on the door, and it swung open, revealing Grandma Joan with her arms folded, looking as staunch as ever. "Took you long enough," she said, without a hello. I let out a breath that I had been holding in longer than I realized. "Yeah, well, I'm here now." We sat down at the kitchen table, the same one we'd shared more Sunday dinners at than I could count. But today, it wasn't a warm roast that lay between us, but a file filled with photos and texts. "I've got something to say," I started, but she cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Save it," she said. "I can guess why you're here, and I don't need an apology." I narrowed my eyes, ready for a quarrel, but her face softened. "What's done is done. Let's just hear what you've got." So, I spilled it, all of it. The late nights Tom pulled, the lies that didn't add up. "Do you have proof?" she asked, eyes piercing through me like she could see the answers scribbled across my heart. "It's all here," I said, tapping the envelope. She reached out and I handed it over, but she didn't open it. Instead, she looked me straight in the eyes. "You know this doesn't change anything between us, right? Family is family." That's when it hit me. Whatever had come between us, whatever words we'd exchanged that we couldn't take back, none of it mattered now. Not with this storm on the horizon. "You're right," I answered. "It doesn't change a thing. I still need you, Grandma." "Good," she grinned, but there was a seriousness in her eyes that wasn't usually there. "Because I need you too. And let me tell you, whatever's in that envelope," she tapped it and slid it back towards me, "it doesn't define who you are or what you're worth." We sat there for a while, not saying much, just being together. It felt like the air had cleared. The storm clouds were still there, but now, I wasn't going to weather them alone. Later, when I went to leave, Grandma Joan gave me a tight squeeze. "You call me, you hear? Day or night. We'll figure this out." I pulled back and looked at her. "I will. And thanks, Grandma, for everything." As I walked away, the envelope heavy in my bag, I felt lighter somehow. My steps were more certain, my spine straighter. Whatever Tom was up to, whatever the PI had uncovered, I was ready to face it. With my grandma at my back, I felt like I could face just about anything. A month had whipped by and there we were, gathered in the stiff parlor of Grandma's house, me, Mom, Dad, and my husband, Tom. An odd quiet hung in the air as the lawyer got ready to dish out the details of the will. Just the family scene you'd expect, except for the empty spot where Grandma used to be. And then, like out of some crappy soap opera, in prances my sister, Lucy, all dolled up and smirking like she's just won the jackpot on a scratch card. Mom and Dad, tears in their eyes, fuss over her like she's just returned from war, not the two-bit runaway act she'd pulled. I stayed put, my hands clenched into fists under the table. I wasn't about to give her my piece yet. She swans up to Tom, bold as brass, and plants one on him. My Tom. As if that wasn't gag-worthy enough, she starts spouting off this garbage about how she'd cooked up this whole mess. I made it all happen that Grandma would bequeath her property to me, not to the villainous Rose. Lucy gloats, thumbing at Grandma's portrait with a grin that made my blood boil. And I also took her husband away from Rose. Mom's sobbing, Dad's face is ghost white, and there's Tom, cheek to cheek with the snake, both of them looking like they've got the secret to the universe. We have the last laugh, he says, voice slippery with that grin plastered all over his face. The room's buzzing with their confidence, them thinking they've got it all sewn up. Grandma's gone, and in their mind, her house, her savings, all her bits and bobs were theirs for the taking. They didn't see me smile. The lawyer, a guy with less flair than a wet match, starts talking. So, as per Mrs. Joan Holloway's last will and testament, the lawyer drones, and here it comes, the entirety of her estate, her home, her financial assets, and her personal effects are to be left to. I already see Lucy reaching out, like she could already touch the velvet of Grandma's antique chairs. Her granddaughter, Rose Marie Kendrick, provided. Lucy's hand hangs there, midair, and the smirks melt off her and Tom's faces faster than ice cream in July. She agrees to use these assets for the continuation of the local community garden which Mrs. Holloway was fond of. The lawyer finishes with no fanfare. The silence is thick enough to cut. Mom and Dad look between me and Lucy, their tears dry now, replaced with something else. Confusion? Betrayal? Both? Finally, I break the quiet. Well, I guess that's that, huh? Lucy's mouth zips shut, all tight lines, and Tom, he's paler than a ghost, his eyes not meeting anyone's. You wouldn't believe the circus that unfolded after the will reading. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, distant relatives suddenly remembering my name. But me? I kept it tight. It wasn't about the drama, it was about staying 3 steps ahead. So, what's the plan now, Rose? Tom asked with that rat-like twitch of his lip, trying to sound all sweet and concerned. We were standing in Grandma's kitchen, a place where I'd shucked more corn than anyone's business. I leaned back against the counter, feeling the cool marble against my spine. Well, Tommy boy, first up, I'm changing the locks. His eyes darted like he'd been zapped. But, what about us? He stammered, like he hadn't been caught red-handed. I chuckled, low and steady. Us? Oh, darling, us jumped ship the moment you cozy up to my sis, just to get a piece of the pie. There were papers in my handbag, crisp and just waiting for his signature. Divorce papers, my ticket out of this mess. The PI snaps, the texts, the late-night calls. I had it all. My hand was stacked, and they didn't even know we were playing cards. Lucy's eyes flicked between us, sensing the shift in the air. She was like a cat that got caught sneaking a paw into the fishbowl. You can't kick him out. We have rights. Rights? I arched an eyebrow, amused at her guts. Sweetheart, after what I found out, the only right you're gonna need is the right to a good lawyer. Tom's face was pale, eyes darting to the door, probably scheming his next escape. But there was nowhere for him to run. Not this time. I felt the weight of the house keys in my pocket, the grooves grounding me. This was more than just a will, it was Grandma speaking from beyond, telling me to tidy up the trash that clung to her legacy. I walked over to Tom and handed him the papers. Sign these, and we can at least pretend you walked away with a shred of dignity. He snatched them up, his hands shaking like he was in a snowstorm without a coat. His signature scribbled across the page was the scribble of a defeated man. Lucy was seething. You think you've won? She hissed, her voice a strained whisper. I smiled, genuine and clear. Honey, this ain't about winning. This is checkmate. You played dirty, and you lost. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a garden to tend to and a life to live. With that, I left them there, in the dust of their greed, in the kitchen filled with memories of sugar cookies and laughter, a kitchen that would soon echo with new stories. No more whys, no regrets, just me, my begonias, and a fresh start. My life's kinda been like a whirlwind tour of the world's kitchen, only with more passport stamps and less sanity. Name's Kira, fresh into the 3rd decade of my ride on this rock, and I've made a living out of breathing in the spices and dishing out the experience through my vlog. So it was just another steamy day in Thailand, with me elbow deep in noodles and peanuts, learning the ropes of an insane pad thai from this little old dude who could have been Yoda's culinary cousin. That's when this tall drink of water, Mark, stumbled into my life, literally. He tripped over a foldable chair trying to get a better look at the pan and nearly ended our romance before it started by nearly sending me headfirst into my own sizzle. Whoa, sorry about that, he chuckled, hauling the chair out of the disaster zone. Just trying to see how the magic happens. You could say it's all in the wrist action, I said, giving the noodles a flamboyant toss. Careful there, wouldn't want to add roadkill tourist to today's menu. Mark laughed, all easy charm and crinkly-eyed smiles. Mark, he said, extending a hand once he was sure it was safe. Kira, the noodle whisperer, I replied, giving his hand a quick shake before diving back into my culinary ballet. And there it was. We clicked quicker than a camera shutter. He was from the States, here to escape the office walls and spreadsheets, which, to me, sounded like a jailbreak from Adulting 101. We spent the week flitting between street food stalls and ancient temples, with him filming the chaos and me explaining the dance between tangy, sweet, spicy, and umami. When the week ended, we swapped digits. Said our see you laters, 'cause goodbyes were for people who had less faith in cheap international texting plans. Months sped past like high-speed train rides, nights spent spilling our thoughts via texts that turned into calls that turned into video chats. Then one day, he just showed up at my doorstep with a ring and a question. We tied the knot 6 months later. Yeah, just like that. Bam. Married. Things took a nosedive after a while. Forget the lovey-dovey honeymoon phase, it was like we'd skipped straight to bickering old couple mode. I'd be coming home from some corner of the world, my brain still buzzing with the new flavors and faces I'd met, and all Mark could do was hassle me about not being normal. You know what a normal wife does, Kira? That's how he'd start, every single time. She cooks, she cleans, she doesn't jet off every other week. Sitting there at the kitchen table, I'd toss my stuff down and give him a look. Seriously, Mark? You think I just flit around for kicks? This is work. My work. To him, it was like my job was make-believe. Work? You think filming some street food and yapping about it online is work? Get real. Get a proper job. Each word stung. It pays, doesn't it? I'd shoot back. But that was never enough. Once, I was up against a deadline, videos needed cutting, articles needed writing, and guess what? Mark barged into the office and dropped a bomb. The house is a mess, Kira. When you gonna clean up? I couldn't believe my ears. You've got hands, Mark. Use 'em. Defying him only cranked his gears worse. What, and let you loaf around editing videos all day? Is that what you call pulling your weight? Freeloader. That's what he called me. In our own home. I'm out there busting my tail to bring home the bacon, I told him, standing my ground. And this freeloader you're talking to just paid off the last of your student loans with her hobby. But it was like talking to a brick wall. All he saw was a wife who wasn't fitting his mold, who wasn't, I don't know, June Cleaver or somebody. And the worst part? Instead of getting it through his thick skull that we were partners in this, he doubled down. Why don't you make something of yourself, huh? He'd sneer. Get a job with a desk, something steady. I am making something of myself. I shouted, slammed my laptop shut so hard I'm surprised it didn't break. You think it's not a real job because I'm not miserable like you? Normal was his favorite word. Bite to eat, 9 to 5, white picket fence, the whole boring shebang. Drove me nuts. But as for me, I wasn't about to let go of my passport or my dreams, no matter what he thought a wife should be. Beatrice, Mark's mom and my mother-in-law, was the kind of person whose idea of a surprise visit was her showing up in your living room ranting about something you did or didn't do. Living just a couple of streets away, she considered our house part of her daily walking route, which basically meant she'd drop by whenever she felt like it. So there I was one Tuesday, laptop open, trying to get some work done on my latest travel vlog. You could almost set your watch by Beatrice. Sure enough, like clockwork, the front door swings open, it's never locked for Beatrice, and there she was. "Working on your little videos again, huh?" Her voice dripped with disdain. She didn't even say hello. I sighed, trying not to look as interrupted as I felt. "Hey, Beatrice. Yeah, gotta keep on top of it." She tossed her oversized purse onto the couch and made herself comfortable. "You know, when I was your age, I was raising kids, keeping a spick-and-span house. Didn't have time for hobbies." Her words plucked at my already frayed nerves. "It's not a hobby, Beatrice. This is my job." Beatrice snorted as she peered over her glasses, which she only wore to make a point. "Call it what you want. When's the last time you cooked your husband a proper dinner? Or are you too busy working on these little trip films?" I bristled. She knew how to hit where it hurt. "Mark eats just fine. I don't hear him complaining." "Oh, he complains, all right. Just not to you." She smirked and picked at a non-existent speck of dust on her trousers. I wanted to scream. Instead, I shut my laptop, a little too hard, and stood up. "I'm right here, Beatrice. And I'm working. Bringing in money. Isn't that important too?" She huffed, getting up. "Well, if you won't listen to me, maybe you'll listen to the pastor. We're having dinner tonight, and he'll set you straight." I was dumbfounded. "Dinner? Tonight? Beatrice, I have deadlines." "Not anymore. You can put off your deadlines to save your marriage. I've seen the signs, Kira. It's now or never." Fuming, I barely managed to keep a civil tone. "Fine. But this is our life, not just mine or Mark's. Don't you forget that." Beatrice smirked, triumphant. "We'll see," she said, and plucked her purse up again. 6 o'clock. And wear something nice for a change. After the door clicked shut, the silence thudded in my ears like the after-ringing of a bell. So much for a quiet workday at home. Now I had to deal with a dinner ambush and a pastor mediating my marriage? Great, just great. Cooking had always been my kind of therapy, mixing flavors like I mixed colors on a canvas. But here came Beatrice, marching into my sanctuary like she owned the place, ready to burn it down with a single glance. That Thursday, I was in the zone, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, another recipe I'd picked up from my travels. The door flew open and Beatrice waltzed in, all frowns and scowls. "What's that smell?" was the greeting I got. No hello, as usual. I kept the irritation out of my voice, doing my best to stay polite. "Stir-fry. It's a recipe from Thailand," I replied, hoping she'd just sit down and maybe, just maybe, keep her opinions to herself for once. But no dice. "Can't you make anything normal? Real food?" Beatrice scoffed, planting her hands on her hips. I could feel the anger bunched up at the base of my throat, but I swallowed it down, trying to preserve some peace. "I just thought we'd try something new," I said. Mark poked at the food with a fork like he was testing if a piece of roadkill was ready to be scraped off the pavement. "New? I've seen better-looking garbage." "You tell her, Mark," Beatrice egged him on, her arms crossed over her chest. "Yeah, Kira, stick to what you know, which isn't much," he chuckled. His mom laughed along, slapping him playfully on the arm. I felt my cheeks burning up. This was too much, even for me. But before I could come up with anything to say, Beatrice grabbed the skillet from the stove. Don't waste our time with this garbage. She hurled the contents of the skillet into the trash can. The room fell silent except for the hiss of leftover heat on the empty pan. I stood there, frozen, trying to wrap my head around the fact that the meal I had spent the last hour preparing was now mixed in with coffee grounds and eggshells. My effort to please, to do something different, felt foolish now. I looked at the trash, and I could feel every cruel word and snide remark they ever threw at me sticking to my skin. I couldn't even be mad anymore, it felt pointless. I started to clean up, my movements automatic. The kitchen felt colder now. I knew I should be angry, I should scream or cry or something to show them this wasn't okay. But instead, I just moved quietly, picking up the pieces of my failed attempt at dinner, at trying something, anything, to make this life I was living feel like it had a bit of me in it. The day had heated up more than the forecast said. It was Beatrice's birthday, and against my better judgment, I had gone and got her something special. Wrapped the gift myself, this mirror from Morocco, all hand-painted tiles and real craftsmanship. I thought she might appreciate something unique, something not from the department store clearance shelf. So what did you get her? Mark eyed me as he sprawled over the couch like some lazy cat. Something nice? I said, my hands tweaking the bow on the package, trying to smooth down my rising nerves. He chuckled. You're nice, and her nice ain't the same, Kira. We were in the dining room, this shrine to dark wood and silence, waiting for the queen herself to show up. I heard her before I saw her, that voice curdling the air. Mark, what's the hold-up? There's cake waiting. She swept in, her gaze fell on the gift, and she frowned. What's that? I handed over the package with a hopeful smile. Happy birthday, Beatrice. She looked at me like I was offering a dead rat. But she took it, shredded the paper, and held up the mirror. What in the world is this? I felt Mark's stare burning into my scalp. It's a mirror, handmade from Morocco. I thought it was beautiful, unique. Unique? She squawked, her face scrunching up. It's hideous. And before I could even blink, she slammed the thing onto the floor. Shattered glass skittered across the tiles like wicked ice. Mark didn't even flinch. Kira, what were you thinking? His voice was sharp enough to cut. I stared at the broken mirror, feeling something inside me splinter along with it. I'm sorry, I thought. She cut me off with a wave of her hand, turned to Mark. Tell your wife to stick to cash. Can't go wrong with money. I felt the shards of my patience giving away under my feet. I went to my purse, pulled out an envelope, last-minute insurance I knew I might need, and handed her 5 crisp $100 bills. Here, I said, trying to hide the trembling in my words. She snatched the cash hungrily. Well, that's more like it. Mark walked over, swept a piece of broken mirror with his shoe, looking at me like I was the mess he had to clean up. Next time, just ask me what to get her, he snapped. I dumped the shards into the bin, listening to them tinkle like a chandelier in a quake. A quieter, angrier part of me wished I could tell her exactly where she could stick her money, but instead, I quietly wrapped her cake slices, got through the day without another word. As the hours lurched by, the house filled with the laughter and chitter of guests, all of them ignoring the tense undercurrent that was me and them. I handed out drinks, laughed when expected, and played the part of the devoted wife and daughter-in-law. That evening I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at my reflection in the smaller, unbroken mirror there. If only I could buy something to fix what was broken inside, I thought. The silent room seemed to agree, and for a long time, it was the most understanding company I had. The wheels of my suitcase dragged a rhythmic clunking over the joints in the sidewalk as I walked up to my front door. I'd just gotten back from Greece. I was there for a shoot, for weeks of filming and a slice of freedom that I didn't know I was starving for until I tasted it. My keys seemed to jangle extra loud as I fitted them into the lock and swung the door open. What hit me wasn't the smell of the house or the stack of unopened mail. It was Beatrice, planted in the middle of the living room, bags piled at her feet like she'd just claimed a spot on the subway. "I'm moving in," she declared, her voice brooking no argument. I felt my exhaustion evaporate into a tight ball of anxiety in my chest. "What? Why?" She eyed me like I was being thick on purpose. "Rent's killing me, and since you're never around, it makes sense. I'll take the guest room." This was the worst kind of surprise, the kind that didn't bring any joy, just a heavy weight. I looked to Mark, seeking an ally, but his face was set in stone. "Yeah, Kira, why the hell not? Makes sense to me," Mark said. I heard in his voice the finality of a door slamming shut. "But, Mark, He cut me off with a sharp wave of his hand. "Don't start. You've been freeloading off my space for years." The word stung, like rubbing alcohol on a fresh cut. That's when my hand dove into my bag, rummaging past the trinkets and memories of Greece until my fingers wrapped around the envelope, the one I kept tucked away for moments impossible to predict. I slapped the divorce papers on the coffee table between us. They seemed to hover for a second before landing, a soft sweep in the tense air. "I want a divorce." For a moment, Mark just stared, and the only sound was Beatrice's slow inhale as if she was about to dive underwater. He picked up the papers, and I braced myself for yelling, for pleading, anything. But without saying a word, he scrawled his name across the bottom and tossed them back at me like they were a takeout menu he didn't want. Beatrice, her eyes gleaming like when she found $50 in a coat pocket, actually clapped. "It's about time." I looked between the two of them, this pair that was supposed to be my family, and I felt nothing but the need to fill up my lungs. I didn't belong here, maybe I never did. With one last look at the shell of what used to be my life, I grabbed my suitcase. "Where you going, Kira?" Mark's voice was a dull blade, not cutting enough to hurt anymore. "Anywhere but here." My voice came out steadier than I felt. There were no goodbyes, just the click of the door behind me, a soft punctuation mark on the end of a very long, very tiring sentence. It's strange how life can do a 180 when you're least expecting it. A few months since the divorce and life settled into a new kind of normal. My apartment might have been smaller than the house, but it was mine. I was in the middle of a tea brewing ritual that had become my new little evening piece when there was a knock at the door. I opened the door, and there they were, Mark and Beatrice. Like they'd just been out for a walk and decided to stop by. "We saw your TV show," Mark said, shoving his hands into his pockets, a sheepish grin smeared across his face like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Beatrice just stood there, a forced smile stretching her lips tight. "Yeah?" I said, nursing my mug, not stepping aside to let them in. "You watching TV together now?" "You're doing well, huh?" Beatrice chimed in, peering over Mark's shoulder to get a look inside the apartment. I leaned against the door frame, taking a slow sip, feeling the heat of the tea and the situation. "I suppose," I replied, the edge of a laugh bubbling beneath the surface. It wasn't just small talk they were after, I could smell it. These two never came without an agenda. Beatrice looked desperate, fidgeting with her purse strap, and Mark looked like he was about to try selling me a used car that was 2 steps away from the junkyard. They tried to butter me up with compliments, nodding at my tiny living room as if it was a palace, but I wasn't biting. Their tune changed rapidly when the buttering didn't work. "Look, Kira." Mark's gaze darted around, avoiding mine. "Things ain't been so great since you left. Financially, I mean." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that right?" "And it's not just about money," Beatrice piped up. "It's lonely. We miss you." I couldn't help it then, I laughed. It was dry and had the edge of years of bottled up frustrations behind it. "You miss me? Well, that's a neat trick." Mark's face flushed a shade of guilt so vivid I almost felt sorry for him. "Almost. We just thought, maybe we could start over." I leaned closer, making sure they could see the lack of sympathy in my eyes. "You thought wrong. I've moved on, and this?" I paused, gesturing to the space between us with my mug. This is me being happy, without the drama, without the mess. You two were the best bad decision I ever walked away from. Beatrice's mouth snapped shut, her face folding into a scowl. Mark just stood there like I'd slapped him across the face. They didn't say anything more, they didn't have to. As they turned away, their shoulders slumped, the door closed with a soft click and I was alone again, my heart pounding a victory march. I turned, pressing my back against the door, sliding down till I was sitting with the mug held loosely in my grip, my laughter ringing out, clear and loud in the empty apartment. Turning the tables never felt so good. My life's totally flipped since the show took off. People can't seem to get enough of me eating my way through the most out-of-way places and bringing back killer recipes. I guess it's true what they say, everyone loves a good comeback story, and mine's being served up nice and spicy. As I sat scrolling through my socials, watching the follower count tick up like it's got somewhere to be, my doorbell rings. Who could that be? I haven't ordered takeout. Lo and behold, there they were again, Mark dragging his feet and Beatrice trying to straighten out her scowl like she's walking into church. Kira, you gotta listen. Mark gets down on his knees right in my hallway like he's about to propose again, which is funny in a sad sort of way. I'll do anything. I'll even clean the house, cook your meals. I crossed my arms, trying not to let my smirk show. Really? You cooking? That'd be the day. And Beatrice, oh, she's got this look like she just ate something sour. Kira, the show's great and all, but family's family. I let out a little chuckle. Oh, I know about family all right. And mine just got a whole lot bigger, a couple million online. They blinked at me, not quite getting it, so I spelled it out. My followers, Mark. They're my family now. And they seem to appreciate me a whole lot more. Beatrice piped up again, with her hands fidgeting like she's trying to pull words out of the air. Kira, we just didn't realize. I cut her off with a little wave of my hand. Save it. I've heard enough. Did I ever tell you about that mirror from Morocco, Beatrice, the one I gave you for your birthday? They both looked at me, puzzled, like two kids who can't remember if they fed the dog. You broke it, threw it on the floor, I reminded her. Beatrice's face fell. Oh, that old thing? I nodded, casual-like. Worth thousands, that old thing. But you wouldn't know value if it bit you in the butt. I swear, you could almost see the cogs turning in their heads as they put two and two together, finally understanding the score. Mark found his feet again, stammering, but we didn't know. Kira, please. I raised a hand to stop him. I've always had money, even when you thought I was down and out. And now, my little TV venture's making sure I've got more than I know what to do with. Mark looked like he was about to pass out, and Beatrice, she was muttering under her breath, something about not knowing. I walked to the door, opened it wide, and stood there. Here's how it's going to be. You two will turn around, walk out of my life, and never come back. I don't need your drama, I've got my own show for that. They didn't move, just stood there gobsmacked. So, I made it real simple for them. Out. Now. And don't bother me again. I got recipes to try and places to see, and none of them include you. Shutting the door behind them, I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. I went back to my kitchen, to my little empire of spices and sauces, to the future I was cooking up one dish at a time. I wasn't really mad, just done. Done with their begging, done with their games, done with anything that didn't smell like success. Or my next big meal. It felt good. No, it felt great. I glanced at my phone again, another 100 followers since I last checked. Yeah, I think I'll be alright. No need to look back when the future's this flavorful. Hey, my name's Margot. Last year, I changed my status to Mrs. and added a wedding band next to my collection of courtroom victories. Slinging arguments before a judge, that's my zone. But dang, I never thought I'd need a defense strategy for family dinners. So, let me put you in the picture. My man, Tom. He's a mama's boy, and I get why. Mrs. Walters, his mom, is the queen bee of their hive. Did the single mom hustle, brought up 2 kids solo. Mad props for that. Sarah, his sister, well, she's another story, thinks she's the center of the universe or something. I remember walking into their place for the first time, Tom's arm around me like he's showing off a trophy. The living room's like a shrine, photos of Tom and Sarah plastered on every surface. It's cozy but feels like stepping onto a movie set where they've been playing house for years, and suddenly I'm the unexpected guest star. Mrs. Walters came at me with this tight-lipped smile. You know the kind, the one that says, I'm smiling because that's what I'm supposed to do, but I'd rather be scrubbing the bathroom grout with your toothbrush. Dressed in one of those floral numbers that just screamed I'm the matriarch. Margot, dear, Tom's told us so much about you, she said, sizing me up like I'm a car she's not sure she wants to buy. Yeah, I've been looking forward to meeting the famous Mrs. Walters. Tom's done nothing but sing your praises, I said, trying to thaw the room a bit. Oh, how sweet, Sarah chimed in. She'd been eyeing me like a hawk since I walked in. Tell us, Margot, how's the lawyer life? I picture you in court, like on TV, making bank. So how much do you actually make? I almost choked on my spit. Who asks that straight out of the gate? I laughed though, 'cause what else are you gonna do? You know, trade secret and all that. I shot back, not missing a beat. Mrs. Walters picked up the baton like it was a relay race. But surely you can give us a ballpark figure. For family. Tom shot me that please don't be mad look, but I kept my cool. If I had $1 for every time someone asked me that, I'd have enough to change the subject, I parried, topping it off with what I hoped was a disarming smile. Mrs. Walters snorted. Yeah, she snorted. Well, it's no secret what a teacher earns. Right, Tom? Mom, Tom sighed. Let's not do this now. Right, she said, waving her hand like she's dismissing a servant or something. Anyway, you'll be like family now, sharing is caring and all that. I slid a look at Tom. His help me face was on full display. I knew then I wasn't just marrying Tom, I was enlisting in some low-key domestic Cold War. Couple weeks in, and I'm standing in our kitchen, apron on, pot simmering, trying out Mrs. Walters' famous chili recipe. Now, Mrs. Walters and Sarah have got this routine. They drop over unannounced like they forgot it ain't their house. Your chili needs more heat, Mrs. Walters picks at the ladle like she might catch something. And less salt. Watch your husband's blood pressure. Got it, I reply. Inside, I'm rolling my eyes so hard I'm seeing my brain. Sarah's there too, all leaned back on a stool like she's the Queen of Sheba. You see this spot, Margot? Cleanliness is next to godliness, isn't it, Mom? Mrs. Walters nods like it's gospel and Sarah's high-fiving herself in her head. Funny, I cleaned this place this morning, I say, swiping the spot off the counter. Must have missed that one. Tom's in the other room, clueless, probably deep in some video game or sports stats. So, I figure it's high time to fill him in on the home invasions. I poke my head in where he's slouched on the couch. Hey, you got a sec? What's up, babe? Tom flicks his eyes up for just a moment, poor thing, like he's afraid he might miss a crucial play. Your mom and Sarah, they come in, take over, nitpick everything I do. It's like they're looking for stuff to complain about, I let it tumble out. Margot, they mean well, you know? They're just… Tom scratches his head. I'll talk to them. They'll chill out. Back to the kitchen, and it's like walking into the final round of some cook-off where I'm the only contestant and the judges are out for blood. So, Margot, when's dinner? Tom must be starving. Sarah glances at me like I'm the help. Whenever the chili decides it's ready, I shoot back, but I keep my voice light. It's a tightrope walk. Dinner lands on the table, and I'm scanning their faces. Mrs. Walters stirs hers around, inspecting every bean like it holds the secret to the universe. Bit different from how I make it, Mrs. Walters finally says. That's code for nice try, but you're no match for me. Tom dives in though, bless him. Babe, this is awesome. Right, Mom? Sakai, Sarah mutters, and Mrs. Walters just shrugs like she's agreeing with the worst food critic. After they leave, Tom's slapping his belly, saying it's all good. I'm watching the door shut behind them, feeling tiny, like I'm losing at some game I didn't sign up to play. The next time they pop over, it's the same old tune, like nothing changed. I must have been dreaming to think a few words from Tom might turn the tide. Still, I ask him to talk to his mother about boundaries. I thought getting hitched was the hard part. Fitting into Tom's family? That's the real challenge. They've got their own idea of family, and I ain't in it, yet. If this is what married life is like, count me out of the honeymoon phase. It was one of those days where the clock seemed to tick slower than syrup drips from a bottle. That's when my phone decided to sing its little heart out. Glancing at the caller ID, my heart sank. It was Mrs. Walters. Again. Margot. Her voice was stern, and it did nothing for my headache. You think you can just snatch Tom away from us, huh? Her words stung like vinegar on a paper cut. I glanced over at Tom, hoping he'd at least flinch at his mother's tone. Nothing. He's glued to the TV screen, a statue with heartbeat. Mrs. Walters, it's not like that. We're just trying to set up some boundaries, I said, my voice squeezed thin. Boundaries? She fumed. That's just a fancy word for shutting us out. You can't do that to us, to me. He's my son. As I blinked back frustration, Tom's still silent, looking like someone shrunk his spine in the wash. Listen, it's normal for married folks to want their own space. I tried to keep the edge out of my tone. Space? He's never needed space before you, came her sharp retort. Her voice was a buzzsaw and each word carved up my patience. That was when Tom decided to pipe up, but not to back me up. No. Mom, is everything okay? Margot's not, she's not being unreasonable, I guess, he said, but his voice was like wet cardboard. Tom, I just can't believe this. First, Sarah tells me Margot is making a fuss over our visits, and now this? Mrs. Walters sounded wounded, and boy did Tom jump on that note. Sarah said that? Tom turned to me, eyebrows raised as if I was the one creating trouble. Yeah, she did. And I think she's right. Family is family, Tom. You can't just turn your back on us. She pressed harder, knowing she was reeling him in. I saw my husband, a man I loved, deflate like a party balloon 2 days after the fun. The call ended with promises of another family meeting that felt more like a summit to discuss the terms of my surrender. After the call, it was as if nothing happened. Tom settled back on the couch, resuming his championship in channel surfing. Mrs. Walters resumed her drive-bys, each one a masterclass in thinly veiled jabs. And Sarah? Well, she might as well have been a puppet master the way she got Tom's ear whenever she pleased. When word got back to me that my husband's sister, Sarah, was running her mouth about me all over town, my blood boiled for a second. But I didn't let it get the best of me. I knew I had to handle this the right way. So, I waited for the right moment to deal with Sarah directly, and that moment came sooner than I thought. I found Sarah at the market on a Saturday morning, filling her basket with groceries. She didn't see me at first, but I walked right up to her, steady and strong. Sarah, I said. She looked up and rolled her eyes. What do you want, Margot? We need to talk. It's about the stories you've been spreading. She snorted loudly, a smirk spreading across her face. Stories? I don't know what you're talking about. The rumors, Sarah. About me. Emily's bossy, Emily's this and that. Cut it out. She laughed, tossing an apple up and down in her hand. And what are you going to do if I don't? You think you can boss me around? I kept my cool. Listen, spreading lies isn't just mean, it's slander. And I won't stand for it. Sarah laughed again, louder this time. You're gonna sue me? Get real, Margot. You ain't got the stomach for that. People's reputations are at stake. I'm serious, Sarah. Keep it up, and yes, I will take legal action if I need to. The arrogance just poured off her as she leaned in close. You're in way over your head. Little Miss City Lawyer gonna take me to court? This isn't a joke, Sarah. I'm giving you a chance to stop this nonsense before it gets serious. She shoved her face closer to mine, a challenge plain in her expression. Bring it on, Margot. Do your worst. With that, she spun on her heel, almost knocking over a display of canned beans, and left me standing there. Her laughter echoed through the aisle long after she was gone. I walked back home slower than usual, turning everything over in my mind. Later that day, when my husband came back from wherever he'd been, I told him what had happened. He was in the middle of taking his boots off and he froze, one boot off, the other still on. You did what now? I told Sarah off. I threatened her with legal action if she doesn't stop spreading rumors. His face went red, then white. You couldn't just let it go? Why'd you have to stir the pot, Margot? I straightened up. Because it's not right, and I won't be walked over. Not by her, not by anyone. We were silent for a good long while after that, both of us lost in our thoughts. It was clear this was more than a little family squabble, it was a line drawn in the sand, and I had to stand my ground. He's got nothin'. Just stands there with that same lost puppy look that's growing a permanent spot on his face. I tossed myself onto the couch, fuming. The gossip might calm down for now, but Sarah, she's the kind of weed that keeps sprouting up. No tellin' when she'll start her yapin again. And Tom? God knows if he'll ever find the guts to stand up to them. Right now, though, I just need to cool off, figure out my next move in this messy game they're all too eager to play. The whole mess with Sarah had me weighing my options like a pros and cons list in my head. I mean, I signed up for a life with Tom, not a daily soap opera with his family. And with things going from bad to worse, the D word started rattling around in my brain like loose change in a dryer. Then, as if on cue, Mrs. Walters, the town's self-appointed gossip queen and Sarah's godmother, rings me up. Margot, dear, she chirped like a bird that spotted a worm. We're throwing a little shindig for Sarah's engagement. It's happening at Luigi's next week. We'd love to see you there. The tone of her voice was all fake nicety, the kind that practically screams I dare you to show up. I'm staring at the silent phone after hanging up, thinking how this invite smells like a setup. Tom's already on edge, and now this? I couldn't help but blurt out to him, guess who's got plans for us next week? He's sitting at the kitchen table, forehead creased like he's trying to iron it out with thought. Who's scheming now? Your sister's engagement party, I say flat out. We're invited, courtesy of Mrs. Walters. His face goes a shade paler, the crease deepening. Oh, hell. Yeah. Oh, hell sounds about right. So, what's the play here, Tom? We gonna roll over and play nice, or what? He's quiet for too long, and I'm not having it. Come on, spit it out. Tom finally looks up, his eyes are all serious. Margot, it's family. I think we should go. I cross my arms, feeling the heat rise up my neck. And let Sarah have a field day? I'm not their punching bag. He throws his hands up, a little too dramatic if you ask me. What do you want me to say? That's my sister, Margot. I lean in, my own hands flat on the table. And I'm your wife. Or does that not count for much these days? The D word is right there on the tip of my tongue, but I bite it back hard. Tom runs his hand through his hair, making it stand up like he's just had an electric shock. Of course, it counts. Look, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place here. I'm a heartbeat away from losing my cool. Well, guess what, sweetheart? So am I. I married you, not your constant need to please your family at my expense. Tom stands up, walks over, and takes my hands. They felt like rough grip paper, all work and worry. Margot, I love you. I do. And I hate that it's got to this. Let's not go to the party. You and me, we're a team, right? It struck me then that this was the first time in a long while he'd picked me over them without flinching. It felt like finding an oasis in the middle of the desert. That night, the thought of divorce quietly tucked itself away, not gone, but sleeping, sort of like a dog with one eye always open. But it was enough for me to catch my breath, to maybe believe that we could find some solid ground again. Luigi's was hoppin' when we showed up, walls throbbing with too loud laughter and clinking glasses. I spot Mrs. Walters right off, sitting queen bee style at the biggest table with that I rule the world look. There's Tom's sister, Sarah, all grins like she's won the lottery, and her guy, Mark, a sort of deer in headlights type trying to smile. His folks are with them too, stiff and awkward like they wandered into the wrong movie theater. Mrs. Walters zeroes in on me the second we step in. "Margot," she uses, like I'm a 5-year-old who's not playing nice. "You'll be taking care of the bill tonight, right? To show you're one of us." I just about spit out my drink. What? Why me? The table's all ears now, and the air's thick with that "oh, this is gonna be good" vibe. Mrs. Walters stretches her smile. Tradition, sweetheart. The newest family member always shows their commitment. My jaw clamps shut so fast I'm surprised I don't chip a tooth. Commitment? That sounds a whole lot like a shakedown. Everyone's perked up like hounds hearing a whistle, and there she goes, Mrs. Walters puffing up like I've slapped her. "Excuse me? That's uncalled for." Tom leans in, his voice barely more than a spit of sound. "Just do it, Margot. It's not a big deal." "A big deal?" I fire back, whisper turned to a snarl. "No thanks. I ain't no one's piggy bank." He's hissing now, real quiet but clear. "Pay the damn bill, Margot, or we're through." I mean it. My laugh's as sharp as a snapped wire. "You're not serious?" He's all stone face and tight mouth. "You think I'm playing?" I stare him down. "Divorce over this?" He's all, "Family first, Margot." I'm shaking my head, and where do I fit, huh? It's showdown time, and even Mark and his parents are watching, their faces screaming what the hell's going on? I push back my chair and stand, let them all get an earful. "No, I ain't doing this dance," I say, voice like a hammer on steel. There's shock on their faces, some whispering, some wide-eyed. Tom's going red, white, red, like a stoplight losing its mind. Mrs. Walters looks like she might choke. I walk out into the night. It's black and cool and smells like freedom. I hear the door slam behind me, my heart's doing a 100-yard dash, but it's Tom who flung the D word, not me. The bar was nothing special, just another hole in the wall with dim lights and the smell of old beer. I had barely settled with a glass of something strong when my phone rang. It was Tom, and for a moment, I considered not answering. But I did. "Margot, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't want to say divorce." Tom's voice was rushed, apologetic. Before I could even think of a response, Sarah's voice blasted through. "You've ruined my engagement dinner, you selfish." The phone must have changed hands so fast my head spun. I could practically hear the venom in her voice. In the background, I heard Mrs. Walters, loud and clear. "Why should I pay? He's your son, you pay the bill." I won't have my daughter married into a family that doesn't know how to treat. The chaos from Luigi's was spilling through the phone like a bad sitcom without a laugh track. People were arguing, and it seemed like nobody was keen on picking up the tab. I pushed away from the bar, my anger lending me a clear, calm voice. "Sarah, chill out. Your mom's the one making a scene, not me." "Hang up, Margot," Tom said, now a faint whisper behind his sister's ranting. "No, she needs to." Sarah kept going, but I wasn't about to play this game. I ended the call. The screen showed a string of missed calls and texts that I swiped away. They were probably all about the same thing. Guilt, blame, the usual. I looked at the bartender. "Another one, please." He nodded, pouring another shot without a word. Silence settled around me, except for the low murmur from the regulars scattered around. I tried to collect my thoughts. My phone screen lit up again, showing Tom's name. The guy just didn't know when to quit. I flipped the phone face down, letting it go to voicemail. It was futile to talk when the whole crew was going off the rails back there. A few drinks later, the door to the bar creaked open, and in came a chilly gust of evening air. But I didn't look up. It didn't matter who was coming and going. I thought about what just happened, what it all meant. Here I was, sitting in a bar because my family-in-law decided I was the bank. And instead of understanding, my supposed partner turned it into an ultimatum. I finally picked up my phone and typed out a text. Tom, we're done. Sarah can think what she wants, and your mom can deal with her own damn bills. I won't be part of this circus anymore. Just as I hit send, the phone rang again. This time, I shut it off. I was tired. Tired of the arguing, the demands, and above all, tired of feeling like I was alone in a partnership that was supposed to have my back. When the room finally stopped spinning, and my head felt a little clearer, I knew what had to happen next. It was time to start looking forward, even if I had to do it on my own. No more games, no more being the scapegoat for a family that couldn't see past their own drama. I walked out of the bar, leaving the noise and the night behind. The air was getting colder, and the city lights were starting to blur into the coming darkness. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it was mine to take. What a mess that last evening was. The whole thing at the restaurant blew up bigger than anyone thought. The groom had had it up to here with the drama and ditched the engagement right then and there. Sarah's face when he dropped that bomb, I can't even. No one saw it coming, least of all her. Then the mother-in-law went off the deep end. She was screaming like some banshee, causing such a scene that the groom's folks were ready to dial 911. Disrespect, she was yowling. No consideration. It was chaos, the kind of thing you see on those trashy daytime shows where chairs start flying. Meanwhile, I was done. I filed for divorce and cut phone ties. Tom and his calls? Ignored. His messages? Deleted. The last I heard, him, his sister, my former mother-in-law from hell, they're all holed up in the same house, probably driving each other up the wall. As for me, it felt like I'd finally stopped holding my breath after years underwater. Life's simpler now, but that evening's still the talk whenever I bump into people from the old circle. It gets old, you know? So here's the update, for anyone who still cares, I'm living my best, most peaceful life. I'm sitting in my usual spot at the cafe down the street from my place, the one where the coffee is strong and no one asks too many questions. The barista gives me a nod. The usual, he asks, like he's asking if the sky's up. Yep, I say. That's what my days are like now, no fluff or meddling in-laws. Work's a breeze when it's just that, work. Free time is mine to enjoy without a side of guilt trips or obligations. I curl up on my couch, that one piece of furniture that's followed me through all the moves. The springs are shot to hell, but it fits my back just right. I flip on the TV, watching some crime show where they catch the bad guys by minute 40. The peace is what gets me. Not eerie or lonely, just peace. Breathe in, breathe out. No more walking on eggshells or cleaning up family feuds. This is living. When I hit the pillow each night, it's with a sense of I did it. No pat on the back needed. I know my worth, and finally, I'm living like it. I'm eating my lunch when the phone dings. A message from a number I don't know. Probably Tom, using someone else's phone to reach out. I delete it without reading. Not today, Satan, not ever, actually. They used to say, you'll regret this. But here I am, not a single regret in sight. The day drags out, cozy and fine, and it ends with a glass of something smooth and a book I've been meaning to read. The heroine's tough, but fair, reminds me of someone I know.
Hey, there, name's Julia. I'm 35, work as a school teacher, and I'm married to Mark. He's a big shot manager at some corporate firm, rakes in a good amount of cash. We've been hitched for about 5 years now. Mark's got a son from his previous marriage, kid's name is John, he's 12. Let me paint you a picture of our lives. I'm as normal as they come, got a steady job, a home, a man I love, and a kid who isn't mine but I've come to love him like my own. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, it ain't all sunshine and rainbows. Mark and I have been trying to have a kid of our own. Month after month, the same routine. The hope, the anticipation, and then the crushing disappointment. The worst part of it all? Mark points the finger at me. One evening, Mark comes home, his face is like a thundercloud. He throws his briefcase on the couch, loosens his tie, and pours himself a stiff drink. I'm in the kitchen, trying to cook dinner, trying to ignore the tension that's thick in the air. He takes a sip of his drink, then turns to me, his eyes hard. Julia, he says, his voice cold, I have a kid. I didn't have any issues with Linda. It's you who can't. His voice trails off, but the message is loud and clear. I'm the problem. His folks, they're no better. They echo his sentiments. I still remember a family dinner at their place. Mark's mom, a stern woman with a sharp tongue, looks at me across the table and says, Linda gave us a grandson. We thought you'd give us a grandchild too, Julia. But it seems we were wrong. The room goes quiet, and I feel like I've been slapped. I can't say anything, can't do anything. I just sit there, my face hot, my heart pounding. Then there's Linda, Mark's ex, the mother of John. She's like a specter that haunts our lives. She's a barmaid, always dressed to kill, always the life of the party. I've met her many times. She's got a way about her, a way that draws people in. She knows how to talk, how to charm. She's got Mark's folks eating out of her hand. I remember one time she came over to pick up John. Mark's mom was there, and they greeted each other like long-lost friends. I watched from the doorway, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Julia, we were just looking at old photos. You should join us. Linda's voice, sugary sweet, cuts through the silence of the room. She's sitting on our couch, flipping through our family album with Mark's mother. I stand in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest. I feel like an intruder in my own home. I plaster a smile on my face and walk over to them. The photos are a stark reminder of a past I was never part of. Mark and Linda, young and in love. John, a chubby baby in Linda's arms. Linda and Mark's mom, laughing over something, looking like best friends. It's like a punch to the gut. John was such a cute baby, Linda coos, pointing at a photo. I force a laugh, nodding in agreement. I feel Mark's mom's eyes on me, scrutinizing, judging. The room is filled with an uncomfortable silence. I excuse myself, mumbling something about checking on dinner. Mark, meanwhile, is a ghost in our lives. He's always at work, always at the golf club, always on his computer. He's there, but he's not really there, you know? He pays his alimony to Linda, buys John the latest gadgets, tries to be the cool dad. But when it comes to me, to us, he's always too tired, always too busy. One night, he comes home late from the club, the smell of alcohol heavy on his breath. I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, a report card in my hand. Mark, I say, trying to keep my voice steady, we need to talk about John's grades. He grunts, his eyes still closed. Not now, Julia, he mumbles, I'm tired. But Mark, I insist, his grades are slipping. We need to. Julia, he snaps, his voice harsh. I said not now. He turns over, his back to me, and that's the end of our conversation. Later that week, I'm at the grocery store, picking up some stuff for dinner. I bump into Linda in the frozen food aisle. She's got a cart full of junk food, probably for John. He's always been a picky eater, always preferred junk over home-cooked meals. I try to keep my distance, but she spots me. Julia, she calls out, a smirk on her face. Shopping for dinner? I nod, forcing a smile. Just the usual stuff, I reply, keeping my voice casual. She laughs, a high-pitched, annoying sound. You know, John loves my spaghetti. You should try making it sometime. Her words are like a slap in the face. But I keep my cool, nodding and mumbling something about trying it out. I rush home, my mind a whirl of thoughts. I'm left to pick up the pieces. I'm left to play mom to John, to help him with his homework, to attend parent-teacher meetings, to deal with his mood swings. I'm left to clean up Mark's mess, to play the dutiful wife, to put on a happy face when all I want to do is scream. I'm sitting at my desk, scrolling through my phone when a message pops up. It's from my friend, Jenna. There's a photo attached. I open it, and my heart stops. It's Mark, my Mark, with his arm around Linda. They're in a bar, laughing, looking cozy. I can't breathe, can't think. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. I wait for Mark to come home, the photo burning a hole in my pocket. He walks in, tired, a little drunk. I take a deep breath, steeling myself. Mark, I say, my voice steady, we need to talk. He grunts, dropping his keys on the table. What is it, Julia? He asks, his voice tired. I hold up the photo, my hand shaking. He looks at it, his face blank. Then he laughs, a loud, harsh sound. So what? He asks, his voice cold. Linda and I are friends. We have a kid together. His words hit me like a slap in the face. Friends, I repeat, my voice a whisper. He nods, his face hard. Yeah, Julia, friends. We have a kid together. We have a history together. What's your problem? I feel tears prick at my eyes, but I blink them back. I won't let him see me cry. My problem, I say, my voice rising, is that you're my husband, Mark. You're supposed to care about me, about us. He scoffs, rolling his eyes. Oh, Julia, he says, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Always the drama queen. I'm bored, Julia. Bored with this, with us. Linda, she's fun. She's exciting. She understands me. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. I can't breathe, can't think, but I won't let him see me break. I won't give him the satisfaction. Fine, I say, my voice cold. If that's how you feel, then maybe we should end this. He looks at me, his face blank. Then he shrugs, a casual, cruel gesture. Maybe we should, he says, his voice cold. He walks away, leaving me standing there, the photo still clutched in my hand. The next day, I decide to confront Linda. I find her at the bar, serving drinks, laughing with the customers. She looks up as I walk in, her smile fading. Julia, she says, her voice cautious. What brings you here? I slam the photo on the bar, my heart pounding in my chest. What's this, Linda? I ask, my voice steady. She looks at the photo, then at me. She shrugs, a smirk on her face. Mark and I are friends, Julia, she says, her voice casual. We have a kid together. I feel a surge of anger, of betrayal. But I keep my cool, keep my voice steady. He's my husband, Linda, I say, my voice cold, and I won't let you ruin my marriage. She laughs, a harsh, cruel sound. Oh, Julia, she says, her voice dripping with sarcasm, your marriage was ruined the moment you walked into it. Mark's always been mine. He always will be. I feel a surge of anger, of determination. I won't let her win, won't let her destroy my life. We'll see about that, Linda, I say, my voice cold. We'll see about that. I turn and walk away, leaving her standing there, the photo still on the bar. I've got a fight in me, and I'm not going down without a fight. It's a quiet afternoon and I'm sitting with John, Mark's son, at our kitchen table. We've got his school books spread out between us, and I'm helping him with his math homework. John and I have always had a good relationship. He's a good kid, smart and kind. He's nothing like his mother, thank God. Julia, he says, his voice quiet, why does 2x plus 3 equal 5? I explain the equation to him, simplifying it so he understands. He nods, scribbling down the answer in his notebook. We work in silence for a while, the only sound the scratch of his pencil and the occasional sigh of frustration. Then, out of the blue, he says, Dad and Mom meet a lot, you know? I freeze, my heart pounding in my chest. I force a smile, pretending not to be affected. Oh? I ask, my voice casual. That's nice. He nods, oblivious to the turmoil inside me. Yeah, he says, they meet at the park, at the mall. They talk a lot. They laugh a lot. His words are like a punch in the gut. But I can't let him see my pain. I can't let him know how much his words hurt. John, I say, my voice steady, your dad and I, we're good, okay? We're happy. Your mom, she's just a part of his past. He looks at me, his eyes wide. Okay, he says, his voice small. Okay, Julia. Just then, the doorbell rings. It's Linda, here to pick up John. I stand, my heart pounding in my chest. John runs to the door, excited to see his mom. I follow him, my mind racing. I have to confront her, have to tell her to stay away from Mark. Hey, John, Linda says, her voice sweet. Ready to go? John nods, running to get his bag. Linda turns to me, her eyes cold. Julia, she says, her voice icy, we need to talk. I nod, my heart pounding in my chest. Yes, I say, my voice steady, we do. We step outside, away from John. I take a deep breath, steeling myself. Linda, I say, my voice cold, you need to stay away from Mark. She laughs, a harsh, cruel sound. Why? She asks, her voice mocking. Because he's your husband. Because you love him? I feel a surge of anger, of frustration. But I keep my cool, keep my voice steady. Yes, I say, my voice cold, because he's my husband. Because I love him. She smirks, her eyes cold. Oh, Julia, she says, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You're so naive. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. But I won't let her see me break. I won't give her the satisfaction. I'll fight for him, Linda, I say, my voice cold, I won't let you take him away from me. She laughs, a harsh, cruel sound. Oh, Julia, she says, her voice mocking. You don't stand a chance. I have John. He's my trump card. Her words are like a punch in the gut. I can't breathe, can't think. But I won't let her see me break. I won't give her the satisfaction. We'll see about that, Linda, I say, my voice cold. We'll see about that. She leaves, taking John with her. I'm left standing there, my heart pounding in my chest. But I won't let her win. I won't let her take Mark away from me. The days roll on, and I find myself in the park with John again. The sun is shining, casting long shadows on the ground. Kids are laughing, playing. It's a normal day, just like any other. But inside, I'm a whirl of thoughts and emotions. John and I have a routine. We walk around the park, chat about school, friends, video games. He's a good kid, easy to talk to. I've grown fond of him. He's not my son, but I care about him. And that's why the revelation I'm about to stumble upon will hit me so hard. We get back from the park, and it's time for homework. John's got a biology assignment, something about genetics and blood types. I help him out, explaining the basics. Type O, type A, type B, type AB, positive, negative, and so on. It's a bit complicated, but John's a quick learner. The assignment is a simple one. If a mother and a father both have type A blood, what blood type would their child most likely have? The answer is, of course, type A. John gets it right, and I give him a thumbs up. Then, he looks at me with a puzzled expression. But, Julia, he says, I have type B blood. I freeze. My heart pounds in my chest. That's impossible. Unless Mark isn't John's father. I stare at John, my mind racing. But I can't let him see my shock. I can't let him know what I'm thinking. Oh, I say, forcing a casual tone. That's interesting. Who told you that? My doctor, he replies, at my last checkup. I nod, trying to keep my face neutral. Well, sometimes these things can be confusing. Let's just focus on the homework for now, okay? He nods, and we go back to the assignment. But my mind is elsewhere. I'm thinking about Mark, about Linda, about the truth. I'm thinking about how I'm going to deal with this. A few hours later, Linda comes to pick up John. I watch as they drive away, my heart heavy in my chest. I'm not sure what to do, how to handle this. But I know I can't ignore it. I can't pretend like nothing's wrong. John, bless his heart, tells Linda about the genetics problem we solved. He's smiling, excited about his new knowledge. But Linda, she goes pale. She looks at me, her eyes wide. I pretend not to notice. I pretend like everything's fine. But it's not. I've discovered a secret, a truth that could change everything. And I'm not sure what to do with it, but one thing's for sure. I'm not going to let Linda win. I'm not going to let her take Mark away from me. I'm not sure what the future holds. I'm not sure what this revelation means for me, for Mark, for John. But I'll face it head on. I'll fight for what's right. I'll fight for the truth. It was just another day. I was in the kitchen, cooking up some breakfast. Mark was sitting at the table, reading the newspaper. John was upstairs, getting ready for school. It was just like any other day, but inside, I was a mess. "Julia, where's the butter?" Mark asked, not looking up from his newspaper. "In the fridge, where it always is," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He grunted and got up to get it himself. I watched him, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't help but wonder if he knew, if he suspected anything. John came down the stairs, his hair still wet from the shower. He grabbed a piece of toast and started to eat. "John, sit down and eat properly," I said, trying to sound stern. He just shrugged and kept eating. He was always like that, always in a hurry. I watched him, my mind racing. I couldn't help but wonder if he knew, if he suspected anything. After breakfast, Mark left for work and John left for school. I was alone in the house, just me and my thoughts. I went up to John's bathroom, my heart pounding in my chest. I stared at his hairbrush, my hand shaking. I reached out and pulled out a few strands of hair. I put them in a small plastic bag, then did the same with Mark's hairbrush. I sent the hairs off for a DNA test. It was a long shot, but I had to know. I had to know if Mark was John's father. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day, I checked the mail, my heart pounding in my chest. Every day, I was disappointed, but I didn't give up. I couldn't. Not now. Finally, the results arrived. I stared at the envelope, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment of truth. I ripped open the envelope, my hands shaking. I pulled out the paper, my eyes scanning the words. And then, I saw it. The results. The truth. I won't tell you what it says. Not yet. That's a story for another day, but I will tell you this. The truth changed everything. It was a bombshell, a revelation. It turned my world upside down. That day started off pretty ordinary. Mark came home early, and he wasn't alone. Linda was with him, and so were his parents. They had that look, you know the one. The look that says, "We're here, and we're taking over." I was sitting on the couch, holding on to the DNA test results. Mark cleared his throat. "Julia," he started, "I want a divorce." I didn't react. I didn't need to. I knew this was coming. I had been preparing for this. So, I just sat there, staring at him. Linda had this nasty grin on her face. "Guess you're not so special after all, huh?" she said. "Just a gray mouse." Mark's parents were nodding, looking pleased. They never liked me. They thought I was beneath their son. But I didn't care. I didn't care what they thought of me. Not anymore. I stood up, my hands shaking. I walked over to Mark, the DNA test results still in my hands. You want a divorce? I asked. Fine. But first, you might want to take a look at this. I handed him the DNA test results. He took them, looking confused. He read them, his eyes getting wider with every word. This can't be right, he stammered. John's not my son? I nodded. That's right, I said, John's not your son. Linda looked shocked. She grabbed the test results, her hands shaking. She read them, her face going pale. No, she whispered, no, this can't be true. I didn't cheat on you, Mark. I swear. But Mark wasn't having it. You're lying, he yelled, you did this, Julia. You did this to get rid of them. His parents chimed in, siding with Linda. Linda wouldn't cheat. This is your doing, Julia. I shrugged. Fine. I said. Let's do another test then. Let's see if these results hold up. All eyes turned to Linda. She was pale, shaking. No, she said, no more tests. I smirked. Why not, Linda? If you're so sure John is Mark's, what's the harm in another test? Linda broke down, tears streaming down her face. Okay. I cheated. John isn't Mark's. Mark was furious. You lied to me, he said, his voice cold. You lied to me for years. I want all my money back. Every single penny. His parents looked shocked. They tried to argue, tried to deny it. But it was no use. The truth was out. And nothing they could say or do would change that. I watched them, feeling a sense of satisfaction. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I felt powerful. I'd done it. I'd finally left the big mansion, the shimmering chandeliers, the empty glamour, and the web of lies. I'd traded it all for a small, homely apartment in a quiet part of town. It was a far cry from the opulence I was used to, but it was real. It was mine. I'd filled it with second-hand furniture, a few potted plants, and a lot of hope. I continued to teach at the local school, and those kids, they were my lifeline. They kept me grounded, kept me real. Mark, my ex-husband, was another story. He'd finally severed ties with Linda, his ex-wife. He'd come to see her true colors, but it was too late. He had washed his hands off John, Linda's son. Poor kid, he wasn't even Mark's own, but he had been caught in the crossfire. But as much as I tried to forget, the past had a way of sneaking up on me. I missed John, not Mark, never Mark. But John, that kid had wormed his way into my heart. I loved him like he was my own. And it hurt like hell knowing that I wasn't going to see him grow up. Out of the blue, Linda called. You've ruined my life, she accused, her voice shrill and hysterical. You've ruined John's life. I was taken aback, but I didn't let her get to me. Look who's talking, Linda, I retorted. You're the one who brewed this storm. You can't blame anyone else for the rain. She hung up on me. Good riddance. Mark was suing Linda, trying to get back all the money he'd spent on John. His parents were backing him up, of course. They were always on his side. The whole thing was a mess, a dirty, ugly mess. I wanted no part of it. I had my own life to live, my own battles to fight. I was done with them, done with their lies and their games. But I couldn't help but think about John. I hoped he was okay. I hoped he knew that I still cared about him, that I still loved him. I hoped that one day, he would understand why I did what I did. For now, though, I had to keep moving forward. I had to make a life for myself, a life that was mine and mine alone. I was Julia, and this was my story. I was no one's victim, no one's fool. I was a survivor.
Hey there. I'm Clara, and I've been on a roller coaster that I used to call my marriage for the near 2 decades. I know numbers, that's my game, I'm an economist. But I'll let you in on a secret, give me a drab room and a fresh lick of paint and I'll give you a masterpiece. That's where I really shine. Now, Tom, he's a whole different story. The guy's got brains, I'll give him that. Financial analyst, and a damn good one. We met back in college, both of us bright-eyed with textbooks in hand. Dreamt of the big family, the white picket fence, the whole shebang. Turns out, life had other plans. Docs gave us the hard truth, with me, babies just weren't going to happen. Crushed us for a while, yeah, but we bounced back, sorta. We decided, if not a house filled with kids' laughter, we'd fill it with something else, style, charm, call it what you will. We found this house, and signed up for a multi-year mortgage. A beast of a place, years upon years on its bones, creaking like an old ship. Most would have walked away, but not us, we saw what it could be. I remember walking through the door the first time, the smell of dust and forgotten times in the air. Tom was right alongside me, and he was talking big plans, like he did. You see this, Clara? This place is ours. A bit of elbow grease, and we'll make it into something. I laughed, shaking my head at his excitement. Elbow grease? Tom, this place will take more than that. But we'll do it. Room by room. The first couple of years were rough. Juggling jobs and paintbrushes, learning how to fix a pipe without flooding the kitchen. But every evening, we sat amid the chaos of renovation, beers in hand, and it felt like we were invincible. One night, in the middle of an argument about what color the living room should be, he wanted blue, I wanted green, he threw his hands up and cussed. Damn it, Clara, pick whichever. It's just a color. I shot back, just a color? Tom, this is important. It sets the whole mood of the house. I was half mad, half laughing, because who gets into a tiff over paint? The green one, by the way. He said it made my eyes look brighter, and that was that. Every choice, every little victory was ours. Then the house started taking shape, and I got a taste for it, really got a taste for it. The neighbors, friends, they couldn't stop yapping about how I turned the old wreck into something out of a magazine. Each room was a new project, a challenge that I chewed on until it was just right. The transformation wasn't just the house, it was me too. Here I was, sleeves rolled up, covered in paint splatters, fiercer than I ever felt pushing papers at my old economics gig. Holy mackerel, Clara, did you redo the bathroom again? Tom asked one evening, eyebrows raised higher than the new shower head. Yep, didn't like the first tiles we picked. These are better, see? I slapped the wall, proud as hell. He leaned in, squinting at the tiles. Looks the same to me, but if it makes you happy, then I'm all for it. Typical Tom, always played it cool, but I knew he was impressed. When the Lewis family from next door came over for dinner, Mrs. Lewis almost dropped her casserole walking into the dining room. I had to stifle a laugh. I'm sorry, Clara, but this is just... It's gorgeous. You did this? She was all wide-eyed, turning in circles, taking it all in. I shrugged, trying to act like it was no big deal, but inside I was buzzing. Yeah, I did. Got sick of the wallpaper and thought I'd try something new. New? This is a dang masterpiece. Mr. Lewis chimed in, his face all grins. That's it, I'm done with beige. Mrs. Lewis declared, like she was about to start a revolution. The compliments were one thing, but the kicker? When people started asking if I'd take a look at their places, offer some advice. Then one lady, bless her, asked what I'd charge for a full room makeover. That's when the light bulb went off. Tom, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a go at this design thing full-time, I said that night, my head full of dreams and schemes. Tom looked up from his paper. Full-time, huh? You sure you're ready for that? I clenched my jaw but kept my cool. I've never been more sure of anything. Well, then you better get to it. No sense in waiting around, he said, and went back to his reading. Not exactly a parade in my honor, but Tom was never one for big displays. He didn't say much while I set up shop, turned the spare bedroom into my office. He'd pass by the door, give a little nod if he caught my eye. transformed the tangled mess of our yard into a garden people stopped to admire. I'd see him out there, leaning on the fence talking with passers-by about the flowers and the shrubs like he knew what he was talking about. One afternoon he came back inside, shaking his head. "Some guy out there just offered me $50 to talk to his wife about doing up their yard. Can you believe that?" I grinned, leaning back in my chair. We're a hot commodity, what can I say? With every chair I reupholstered and every light fixture I swapped out, my confidence surged. It was real work, getting your hands dirty, making things beautiful. And people paid for it, who would have thought? The hardest part was the learning curve, hanging drywall and not have it look like a dog's breakfast or figuring out plumbing without creating an indoor pool. But it was a good hard, you know? Satisfying. I finally felt like I was in the driver's seat of my own life, taking control and steering myself towards something that was mine and mine alone. Our house, with its fresh coat of me on every wall, every floorboard, it wasn't just a bunch of projects anymore. It was a signpost, pointing me to where I needed to go. Things were getting busier by the day, my phone was constantly buzzing with new clients, and my schedule was a jigsaw puzzle I was somehow supposed to piece together. Tom had been supportive of my work, but something had shifted lately. As my plate piled up, his seemed to empty, chores and all. "Mornin'," I greeted Tom, as I trudged into the kitchen, stepping over a pile of his work shirts. He grunted back, eyes glued to his laptop. At least he used to help with breakfast. "The basket's overflowing, Tom. Your turn, yeah?" I hinted, nudging the basket with my foot so it spilled onto the floor, hoping he'd take the hint. He sighed, not looking up. "Why? You're home all day." I stopped in my tracks. "Say what now?" "Look, you're always here," Tom continued, a little more carefully now, like he sensed the storm brewing. "Makes sense for you to handle the house stuff." "Handle the house stuff?" I repeated, my voice edged with disbelief. "I'm running a business, not sitting around here twiddling my thumbs." Tom's gaze finally broke from his screen. "Yeah, but I have to get to the office." I was about to argue, but the phone rang. Saved by the bell, or cursed, given it was another job to add to the pile. As the days rolled on, the pattern held. Tom's leave-behinds, coffee cups in the living room, newspapers scattered on the dining table, and those darn socks everywhere. You'd think he was trying to mark his territory. "Come on, Tom, this isn't the you I know," I said one Saturday morning, dishes clanking as I loaded the dishwasher with last night's remnants. "You used to care about this stuff." We were like two ships in the night, and I ain't talking about the romantic kind. He was off first thing, back when I was hip-deep in swatches and samples, and by the time he rolled back in, I was dead to the world on the couch, tablet still in hand. "Listen, Tom, we can't go on like this," I said one evening, dishes done, with enough energy left over to tackle what was really bothering me. "We're supposed to be a team." He looked like a teenager caught out past curfew. "Look, Clara, I just don't see the problem." I laughed, but it wasn't the happy kind. "You don't see? Okay. How about we start with you acting like this place is a hotel and I'm the service?" He opened his mouth, then shut it, like the right words had taken a detour. "I'm not asking for much. Just do your share. Act like you live here. Because, spoiler alert, you do." Tom ran a hand through his hair, looking like he wished he could disappear into the couch cushions. "Fine, I'll pick up the slack." "And?" I pressed. "And I'll start by sorting the laundry." "Now we're talking." I nodded, my arms crossed, but my lips trying not to smile, because it was either that or scream. It was a small victory, but I take M where I can get M. It was a reminder that for all the work, all the late nights and color palettes and textures and fittings, if your foundation is shaky, the whole house feels it. And I wasn't just talking about the renovations. I started noticing Tom was glued to his phone more these days. Eyes almost stuck to the screen. And then there was that haircut, the kind young folks are wearing, shaved on the sides and longer on top. When I asked him about it, he just shrugged it off, saying something about wanting a change. To me, it screamed midlife crisis loud and clear. It was finally the day we'd been plowing towards for what felt like forever. The mortgage was paid off. That was supposed to be our light at the end of the tunnel, our big reason to celebrate. So, on my way back from work, I dropped by the liquor store and picked up a bottle of the good stuff, the type that would make your wallet weep. I also got fancy cheeses, the sort with names too difficult to pronounce, and those artisan crackers that Tom liked. I was all set to surprise him. Walking into the house, everything was too quiet. Usually, Tom would be home by now, dinner on the go or some music playing. Not today. The place was dead silent. I called out for him, my voice disappearing into the silence. "Tom, you here?" "Nothing." I wasn't too worried at first. He could have stepped out for something, I thought. Maybe he went to get flowers, to add to the celebration, I hoped. I made my way to the living room and started getting the place ready for when he'd return. It was going to be a good night. We'd earned it. The expensive red would breathe a little, I'd get the snacks looking nice on plates, and we'd cheers to no more damn bank payments. But then I saw them, papers neatly stacked on the coffee table. Not thinking much of it, I reached over and that's when my heart took the first hit. Divorce papers with Tom's name already scribbled at the bottom in his unmistakable handwriting. For a good few minutes, all I could do was stand there. It felt like one of those prank shows where the joke's gone too far. But this was no joke. The realization sank its claws into me, and I could feel my hands shaking, my face hot. Damn it, Tom, what the hell is this? But I was talking to an empty house. I chucked the bottle of wine onto the couch, who cares if it stains, and sat down hard at the coffee table. This wasn't something you slip into conversation, this was a bang, it's over, out of nowhere slap in the face. I tried calling him. It just rang and rang before his voicemail casually invited me to leave a message. So I sat there for hours, waiting for him to walk through the door. I kept picking up my phone, checking if there were any missed calls, any texts. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. The snacks lay forgotten and the bottle of red sat there, the unopened symbol of what was supposed to be our celebration. I remember when we bought this house. We thought this was it, we were set. But now there were just divorce papers and silence. And with every minute he didn't show up, didn't call, it was becoming crystal clear that he wanted out. But he couldn't even tell me to my face. Couldn't even give me a crappy excuse. Tom didn't come, and he didn't call. And I was left alone with a bunch of papers I never wanted, telling a story I didn't sign up for. When Tom walked in the next day, he wasn't alone. There she was, some young girl, looking at me like I'm yesterday's news. But this house, our house, she was eyeing it like it was hers already. "Oh, I wouldn't change a thing," she said as she flounced from room to room. "Except maybe the paint in the living room, brighten things up a bit. Don't you think it's a bit stuffy in here?" Her words, like she's marking her territory. Tom followed her like a lost puppy, then turned to me, "Brazen as you like. We will live here, Clara. In this house. With my new wife." I felt the anger boiling up inside, but I caught a look in his eyes, or maybe it was hers, and just like that, an idea sparked in my head. "Is that so?" I finally said, schooled my features into something calm, too calm. She pranced back in, still taking it all in, claiming it with her greedy little eyes. "Yes," she purred, "it'll do just fine." And then she looks at me like I'm some sort of bug under her shoe. But I'm not. I am the bug that knows where the dirt's hidden, knows exactly what to do when the time's right. I watched them, like a hawk eyeing its prey. Tom, he's talking numbers and moving dates, but I ain't listening. I'm plotting, thinking of every little way I could turn this back on them. Finally, I just smiled at them both. It wasn't a happy smile, but that's not what this was about. This was about wait and see, about holding your cards close to your chest. So I nodded. All right then. Tom paused, probably expected me to yell or throw something. But no, I'm playing this smarter. All right, he echoed, confused, searching my face for the catch. Yeah, all right. You two lovebirds deserve each other. The girl beamed, clueless, thinking she's got it made. And Tom, he had this look, like maybe he's dodged a bullet. But really, he's just fired the starting gun. I turned away to hide the grin spreading across my face. They think they've won, got it all figured out. But little do they know, I've got plans of my own. The game's just begun, and I'm about to make my move. I sat across from Tom at the kitchen table, a bunch of papers spread out between us. Let's make this quick, I said, tapping my fingers on the tabletop. I want my $200,000, what I put into the mortgage. I'm taking my stuff, and that's that. He was half listening, his eyes drifting to where his girlfriend was hanging around like an eager puppy waiting for a treat. Yeah, sounds fair, he mumbled, not taking his gaze off her. A smile, cruel and all mine, lifted the corners of my mouth. And by my stuff, I mean everything I bought. All of it. Sure, whatever. He was nodding along, not really caring or not realizing. Probably both. Tom's attention was all for the young thing, who was now stroking the back of the leather couch, one that I bought on a whim 3 years back because it looked classy and comfortable. We went down the inventory I'd prepared, point by point, and not once did he argue. Not when I claimed the flat-screen TV, not when I tallied up the kitchen gadgets, the high-end mixer, the chef's knives, the espresso machine that took me ages to pick out. With a distracted wave of his hand, he signed where I pointed on each paper. Signed our years away with less thought than he gave his fantasy football league. It took everything I had not to slam my fist on the table to get him to actually look at what he was giving up. But why bother? I was getting what I came for. And so, it was done. We signed our names, cleared the path for new beginnings, or in his case, a shiny new mistake. While Tom wandered out of the room, probably to chase his giggling girlfriend, I stayed put, relishing the weightlessness of ending it all. I heard her before I saw her, her voice like tinkling glass, all fake and pretty. She came into the kitchen, one-eyed turned from a 70s nightmare into a modern foodie paradise, and she ran her fingers along the granite countertops. He never cooked a thing in his life, I thought, and she probably can't boil water. You're old, but you have good taste, she said to me, a backhanded compliment wrapped in a sweet tone that didn't reach her eyes. I looked her up and down, my gaze pointed. Honey, good taste doesn't have an expiration date. But let's see how long your novelty lasts around here. And with that, I grabbed the box filled with photo albums, my favorite coffee mug, and a collection of fridge magnets from every state I'd visited and walked out without a backward glance. I didn't need to look back to know she was still standing there, probably puzzled by my refusal to fight. Good taste indeed. Let her find out, like I did, that marble and leather mean nothing without someone real to share it with. I had my memories, my dignity, and soon enough, a bank account that would turn that house into a distant memory. Moving day had all the drama of a bad TV show. Tom just stood there, mouth hanging open, as the movers made trip after trip out the door. Couch, gone. The fancy heaters I'd haggled for, gone. And yeah, when I said everything, I meant the kitchen sink too. That was a masterpiece of stainless steel, and it was mine when I walked in. It was mine walking out. His girl, what's her face, she lost it. Standing there in designer heels on the hardwood floor, I picked out. This wasn't the deal, she hollered like she was calling the shots now. I leaned against the doorframe, every piece of paper with Tom's signature a shield. Deal was I take what's mine. That's it. Tom finally found his voice, a little wobbly but there. Clara, let's talk about this. There's gotta be. I cut him off with a wave of my hand. Talk? You signed, Tom. As clear as day. Everything I bought, I take. He ran a hand through his hair, the way he did when he realized he was in over his head. But the sink, Clara? Come on. I didn't budge. You should have read the list. Not my problem, you were too busy with her. I nodded towards his plaything, who was now scowling like a kid who'd been told Christmas was cancelled. But where are we gonna wash dishes now? She piped up, hands on her hips like she was in some sort of showdown. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Guess you'll figure it out, won't you? Tom paced now, a caged animal sort of look about him. Clara, we can't just. We need some of this stuff. How about the heaters? It's winter. I glanced at the wall where the heater used to be. Close work. Or hey, maybe you two can snuggle up for warmth. Clara. His voice cracked. Typical. Always loud when he was losing. We had an agreement, Tom. You agreed to 200 grand and for me to take my things. Well, I'm taking my things. That's fairness. That's getting what I'm owed. He went quiet, that defeated slump setting into his shoulders. His girl, she still didn't get it, feet stuck to the ground, her face twisted. This is total crap. I shrugged on my coat, the one I used to leave hanging on the hook by the door. Your problems aren't my problems anymore, sweetie. I put on my sunglasses, grabbed my purse, and stepped out into the cold. The movers had the last few boxes ready to go, and I gave them the nod. Time to move on. Behind me, the door to the house stood open, letting out all the warmth. A pretty good metaphor, maybe, but I wasn't in the mood for poetry. I was in the mood for starting fresh. As I pulled away, I left them standing in an empty house that was once full of everything but love. Love they'd have to find on their own, without the comforts I'd brought into their lives. A month had flown by since the split, my new life slowly taking shape, when my phone buzzed with a number I knew too well. My ex, sounding all choked and lost, was on the line. I can't do this anymore, he groaned. I'm cooking, cleaning, it's all me, all day long. He told me how his young wife did squat, just flicked her thumbs on her phone screen or waltzed out with her pals. He was learning the hard way, juggling pots and pans, scrubbing toilets, and handling laundry. Please, can we try again? I made a mistake, he was practically begging, that note in his voice, like he'd never known a day's work in his life. I held the phone, a smile cracking across my face. You've got some nerve, I chuckled into the receiver. But you made your bed, now lie in it. Hanging up felt like dropping the heaviest bag I'd been carrying without knowing. Released from that old deadweight, I threw myself into my latest project, my very own house. Yeah, you heard that right, my house, not ours, not his, but my very own. As I stood in the entranceway, my new place was bustling with voices and footsteps. A blank canvas waiting for me to splash it with life. Hey lady, where do you want this box? One of the movers called out, struggling under a carton labeled kitchen stuff. Over there, by the counter, I directed, pointing him to the spot. The advance guard of my new abode was just me and a crew who didn't care about the past, just where to lug the next heavy thing. They'd drop a box, wipe their brows and ask where the next goes. A dance of starting anew. That night, with the boxes still piled high, it hit me, this wasn't just a new page, it was a whole other book. And I was going to fill it with wonders and blunders, scribbles, and scenes that made sense only to me. It's funny, how you think you need someone to make a house a home. But all you really need is to surround yourself with things that make you, well, you. Starting over? Yeah, let's paint this town with my kind of life.